everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, I have Josh Torres.
Anyone got the phone number to Intel Corporation?
We have Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Thank God, it's not quite as bad as Dragon's Dogma 2.
Xiaomin Wu.
Dang, was there a recall?
I'm going to have to follow up on some of these clips, but before that, we do have a special guest on the podcast today. Joining us, we have Josh Tolentino.
It's been a while, but I'm back to confuse everybody with a second Josh.
Yep. So if you are a longtime listener of the Tetracast, Josh Tolentino has been on the podcast before. I believe the last time he was here was earlier in the year, around the time of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Josh was the reviewer on that. And of course, he was also present on the end of the year cast last year, I believe. And Josh is back to speak about the headline game for this week's episode of the podcast. And that is the recently released Dragon Age, the Veilguard. And just kind of a no, yeah, I was going to go into that. Yeah, one just kind of processing note. The what we've done, the shorthand that we have done to try to confuse people as little as possible is Josh Torres, the regular, will be Josh or Josh 1, and Josh Tolentino, our special guest, will be Josh 2. So that'll be the paradigm that.
Unfortunately, we could not distinguish them by their initial of their last name because both of them would be Josh T.
Yep.
So we have Josh and Josh 2. Josh 2 is here, like I said, because we are recording this on the 2nd. A couple days ago, Dragon Age: The Veilguard released. A few days before that, all the reviews went up for that, and Josh 2 contributed to RPG Site, the review for Dragon Age: The Veilguard, as well as some guide work that's going up over the weekend and things like that. But of course, we're here just to talk about his impression of the game. I believe out of all the regulars on this podcast, the reason why we've invited Josh 2 is because he's the one who's had access to the game to play for us and kind of give us his impressions. And we have different experiences with the series. Some of us have not played the series. Some of us have played the series, but it's been a while. Adam just recently played through Dragon Age Origins, but not the other games. So we'll just kind of have a back and forth with Josh talking about this, the return of Dragon Age and what he feels about it. And I know a lot of us are interested in at least trying it before the end of the year. But without further ado, I'll hand it off over to Josh to talk about your time with Veilguard. Where have you come from, like in terms of the series? I assume you've played the other 3, but I'm not sure. And where does Veilguard fit in? How does it feel like with the series returning after such a long absence? And just kind of your general thoughts on the game.
Yeah, thanks. It's interesting because it's been the last Dragon Age game was 2014, I believe, Dragon Age Inquisition. So I was last here on the podcast to discuss, I think, Final Fantasy Rebirth, 7 Rebirth, which took what felt like 10 years to make. And I'm back again to discuss Dragon Age, the Veilguard, which as Dragon Age 4, more or less took about 10 years to make happen. So we're on these decade games sort of, and it kind of feels also like Final Fantasy VII. Trying to remember Dragon Age Inquisition almost feels like thinking about an entirely different era of time. It's been that long.
Has it been 10 years?
Yeah,
it has
2014.
to. Yeah.
And not only has it been 10 years, but Dragon Age Origins 2 and Inquisition all released within 5 years of each other. I think Trespasser, if you count that, it's 6. But like they released bang, 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 and then a large absence. So that's kind of exacerbates the feeling, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It was like a different year of BioWare, different year of the games industry, like different era of the world. And so the kids who grew up with the kids who were too young to play Dragon Age then just kind of grew up now and are old enough to play an M-rated game and all of that. But
And it's important to note that also, like, the people who made Dragon Age: The Veilguard, it's not going to be exactly the same people who were at BioWare 10 years ago who made Inquisition and the other Dragon Age games. So, following up, BioWare's understanding of what Dragon Age has been and what it is, it naturally has evolved because there's different people working at that company.
Exactly, yeah. There have been major creative shifts in BioWare as well. So and it kind of shows in the Veilguard. It's very different. It's a very different game than what a lot of people assumed Dragon Age 4 would be back in, say, 2016, 2017, when that Trespasser DLC came out. Like, I played all three Dragon Age games, although it's been quite a while since I last checked in with Origins. Um, and like when that Trespasser DLC came out, that one, I mean, this isn't going to be a spoiler because it's the premise of the Veilguard, but when that Trespasser DLC came out and revealed that your party member Solus is kind of the big was kind of being set up to be the villain of Dragon Age 4, you'd kind of think, "Oh, this is where they're going with it. You as the Inquisitor, the protagonist of Dragon Age Inquisition would be going up north to a different part of the world that you hadn't seen before, that you'd only been kind of seeing referred to in the lore. These important places that were because Dragon Age 1 and 2 and most of Inquisition, those were also, I mean, just to clarify, those all take place kind of in the southern part of the world of Thedas, of the continent of Thedas. It's all in the south. And but Dragon Age Trespasser DLC ends with your Inquisitor just hammering a knife down into the middle of the map, and the knife is on Tevinter. And Tevinter is the a big northern empire. That's kind of their equivalent of the evil Roman Empire, full of blood magic and magisters and stuff like that.
And let me just jump in real quick to say I recently played through Dragon Age Origins, and Tevinter comes up here as a, this sort of, in Origins it's kind of referred to as like this, high society, huge northern like city. And my point is that it's kind of, this place has kind of been like thrown around and teased for pretty much the whole series, and only now we're actually going there.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Tevinter is kind of like where all, like if all you heard was the lore from Dragon Age Origins and bits of Dragon Age Inquisition, Tevinter was where all the bad stuff started. And it's kind of like that's sort of the impression you'd get in those previous games. So it was kind of a big deal. Anyway, so now in Dragon Age: The Veilguard, it takes place. They were actually kind of clever about it. They pick up almost exactly where Dragon Age Inquisition leaves off. They pick up that story where you and Varric, the longtime recurring character from Dragon Age 2 forward, um, are hunting down Solus and since he's been revealed to be this ancient elven god who's in part responsible for the way the world is, um yeah, he's got some big plan to kind of destroy the world to make things better for the elves again. And um he's and it picks up on that story thread from Trespasser, but it also acknowledges that it has been a really long time since anyone knew exactly what was going on with all that stuff. So the Veilguard takes place almost 10 years after Inquisition. So Varric and company and you, the new protagonist Rook, have been hunting down Solus for the last 9 years. Or he's been hunting down Solus for the last 9 years, and you're kind of a relatively recent recruit to his crew. And as his second.
So it takes place 9 years after
Yes,
Inquisition.
9 years after. So it's Varric and some Inquisition alumni like the former NPC Harding. So she was called Scout Harding in um in Inquisition, and was kind of a fan favorite because she was a very nice dwarf lady. And now she's a companion character in the Veilguard. She and Varric and some of their associates have been kind of chasing Solus for the last 10 years, last 9 or 10 years. And then you, as the player customizable protagonist Rook, have been kind of their recruit and their second in command, sort of.
Okay,
And
so
you
you get
kind
yeah. Okay,
you
so you
kind
got
of
the
pick
story
up.
set.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just kind of say yeah. So we got the basically like the story set of like how connecting the past to the present for people who might have been out of the loop in Dragon Age and interested, like where does the Veilguard exactly fit into the mold here? And now kind of established. Okay, we're kind of caught up
Mm.
now. Are
Yeah, and actually that's kind of like it sets the prologue, picking up that thread and then kind of turning the tables on all of it. The prologue was kind of shown off in a lot of the early gameplay demos, so shouldn't be too much of a spoiler at this point. But yeah, you show up in Minrathos, which is the capital of the Tevinter Empire. You follow Solus, and as he's just about to do his big ritual to kind of tear down something he calls the Veil, hence the term Veilguard. The Veil is like this dimensional barrier that separates the world of of magic and demons from the regular world, and which happens to be something Solus created in the first place. So he's tried to tear it down now because he thought it was a mistake. And you disrupt his ritual, you drop a statue on it, and it kind of blows up, and um, Varric's kind of injured during this process, and and some bad stuff happens. And without getting too much into the details, a couple of things that were even worse than Solas pop out of the fade of the magic dimension, which is these two elven gods, which were the some of the people Solas originally put up the veil to imprison to begin with. So like two people who the veil was originally created to kind of capture, get out, and now it's your job as Rook and as the I guess founding member of the Veilguard to stop them, and you have to put together a crew, and that's kind of how it starts. I mean that's kind of like where it kicks off. So like all of the old crew from Inquisition is out of commission or
Does
unable to do the job, and you have to get people together
I
to find a way.
I don't have like this is a question that I assume a lot of people are curious about, but does the game go out of its way to explain what happens to the Inquisitor? Like some people might have an emotional attachment. Some people just might be curious about the narrative through line about shouldn't the Inquisitor be here? Um, how does but it's also like a series kind of tradition to have a new protagonist each entry. I'm just curious how it handles that. Or and that might be a spoiler in itself, I'm not sure.
There's a little bit of spoiler stuff I'm gonna get into, but I think this was confirmed by BioWare publicly, where the Inquisitor does show up.
Mhm.
They are there, and you have during character creation. I put out a guide on that, by the way. The during character creation, you get there's a button you can press that sort of allows you to not import the one of the big breaks from Dragon Age previous games is that the Veilguard does not do any kind of choice importing this time, and they made a big deal out of this whole website where you can kind of set up your choices for Inquisition. But unfortunately, it just took so long between those games that it wasn't really a viable solution anymore. And so Bioware decided, they kind of said it in some interviews that they're really only um, they're really only acknowledging the sort of choices that would have a direct impact on Rook's quest to stop the gods. So, I mean, to stop the escaped elven gods in the north. So, in Inquisition, you only get three major choices, like who the Inquisitor was, um, what they who they romanced in that game, so that it kind of shows up there, and you get references to it, and what happened to the Inquisition, whether it was disbanded or kind of absorbed into the Chantry, into the church at the end of
yeah.
the Trespasser DLC.
From what I
And
saw, because I saw this in like when I was watching a friend play this character creator stuff, and how this basically pops up. It's like you create your character, then there's like a separate option of the character creator that like kind of goes through like kind of like almost like a drop down menu sort of thing through different tabs of like, okay, like who was like your inquisitor, so like what like race
Yeah.
did you choose for the inquisitor, and then like you said, it's like were there any romances, like who did they, were they romantically involved with, and basically the state of the Inquisition you
Yeah.
but after the game, like your intended, but it doesn't like read your Inquisition save file if you
Yeah.
have it. It's just
Unfortunately,
basically
it
it's
doesn't
just
let you keep your
basically
save
all
file.
new choices you're making, all baked in.
Yeah. And they're baked in, and there's kind of an explanation for why the Inquisitor isn't involved. Like, it's sort of a. I guess if you were really. I mean, I guess if you're really invested in the idea of the Inquisitor being the one to chase down his former party member or potentially his lover, depending on how you played how you played Inquisition. Yeah, it does feel like kind of a thinner justification for having a new character like called Rook, but I think they do about as well with it as you could expect without having the game. I mean, if they were committed to not having the game start with the Inquisitor, this is about as good as an explanation as you could expect. At the same time, like narratively, you get the feeling that I think this would be more impactful if they had been able to kind of stick to that vision where it was the Inquisitor sort of tracking Solus down and making and then kind of getting to this reckoning. But since that if that wasn't gonna happen, this is the next best thing, sort of. And they do kind of explain it, and the Inquisitor does show up. You kind of get to meet them, and there is some explanation and some contact, but for the most part, this is Rook's story, in large part, for better and
And I
worse.
know I know there was some, I don't know if kickback is the right word, but there was some grumblings about not using the keep for this game and like, oh, do my choices not matter anymore? But I kind of get it. It's been 10 years. They don't want to say like we're returning to this IP. We know people have been waiting a long time. EA's as a publisher support of single player games has been like wavering for a while now. Does BioWare have a future? All those sorts of questions. I think the last thing they want to do is say we have a new entry in our series, but you don't get the full experience unless you have this keep kind of albatross around your neck and be like, well, all these things are going to be imported, figuring out how that works across console generations, across EA app, and now it's on Steam. I can understand the desire for a clean break in
Yeah,
that
I
sense.
hope you remember your Origin account, but no,
Yeah.
I don't think
Your
anyone wants.
BioWare points.
Meanwhile,
Yeah,
Capcom
I
wants
still
you to
have a
play
few
all
BioWare
games.
points on the BioWare social network or something. That's how I bought my Mass Effect DLC. They tried to they started a social network.
Yeah, when I was playing through Dragon Age Origins, it still has. I mean, I know this isn't too uncommon in older games, but like it has all this like BioWare website point store stuff that shows up on that like title screen. It's kind of weird. It's all
Well, I
broken up
remember,
now.
Adam, when you were playing Origin and I was watching, the 2000s era of BioWare was weird, man. Remember, like, online pass, Jarvik, and there would be an NPC at your
$10
camp.
pass.
Yeah.
There'd be an NPC at your camp that would basically be like a liaison to the store for DLC. Like they would gamify it in that way, and it'd be like, talk to me and swipe your credit card and buy an armor skin or whatever. It was that weird times. It doesn't feel like it was
And
that long
also, do you
ago, but
remember
weird
when
times.
like I guess I don't know if like more online games do this now, but it was weird to see it in an RPG where on like the title screens there'd be like almost like a Twitter feed or some sort of like update feed that has like the latest updates from BioWare or EA or whatever, like on the homepage. It was almost like a homepage. It's kind of weird, rather
Yeah,
than
this
like a
is
title
some
That's
kind of
screen.
not
like
that's
a
not
homepage
too
window.
uncommon, but
Well, you
yeah,
don't in
Not too
single
nothing
player
uncommon,
astounding.
RPGs
but
though. I don't know.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
Although, I mean, you see it on Starfield too. Like in the Starfield menu, it's Space Day. Get your blackout skin for shotguns.
uh,
Oh Jesus. But yeah. So okay, so we got the pretty much establishing like the premise of this game. But throughout like so what were your kind of expectations going into it, and just overall when you were playing through the game up to the end, like what kind of just kind of tell us like some of your thought process going into it, like maybe like from the early game, mid game, late game? Like how has that like your feelings on the game evolved over time as the more time you put into it?
I started out a bit harsher on it than I think I was because, in part, the early, for some reason, for whatever reason, the initial section of the game, the prologue area especially, it performs a lot worse than the rest of the game. So, like, if you somehow got a copy of Dragon Age, I mean, if you were kind of like looking to play the Veilguard somehow for testing, get maybe try to give it more than the first hour or so, because for some reason it was really chugging on my machine,
Okay.
like 30 sub 30 frames per second. But suddenly, after the prologue section, everything got mostly better, like up to much more playable frame rates for me. I was on PC, by the way. um and I'm not sure if that was because of like some kind of pre-release patch or pre-release condition, but yeah, for I was a little less positive on it because at the time I had the frame rate in that prologue section was kind of low, and it made it a bit harder to play the combat, which is in another departure from old Dragon Age. It's a lot more action focused, a lot more real time. um in a way, it's almost kind of like Final Fantasy 16 in that it's got combos, it's got dash cancels and stuff like that. um and so yeah, that gave me a bit of a hard time in the tutorial sections, but suddenly after that things got a lot better performance wise. I'm not sure why, but it didn't make a great first impression in that realm. I mean, with the amount of time that's passed between Dragon Age and Inquisition and the Veilguard, I'd kind of made my peace that this isn't really going to be the game that I thought would be happening circa 2018 or something.
Mhm.
I didn't have too many expectations of what to
Yeah.
look for.
Mhm.
But I kind of grew more positive about it over time because it kind of feels a lot like there's just to throw back a bit to Dragon Age 2, the very divisive Dragon Age 2. Dragon Age 2 is kind of like when BioWare saw the success of Mass Effect 2, what they did with Mass Effect 2 versus Mass Effect 1, like a shift to more like anyway, a shift in tone, a shift in action, a shift in emphasis. And they kind of tried to do that for Dragon Age 2. It didn't really work out for them then. I think it works out for them with the Veilguard. Kind of like the Veilguard feels like a successful attempt to do a Mass Effect style Dragon Age game. And it works for them because in a lot of ways there's a lot this game has a lot in common with Mass Effect.
It's also
And
kind of funny because from like what I've heard, like the soundtrack and like of the game too. There's like definitely some sequences in the Veilguard that like it definitely has like a Mass Effect motif to the soundtrack to it, like
oh yeah,
synthy,
definitely when you
electric
die, I
synthy.
totally
Yeah,
heard, hey, wait, this is like the Mass Effect death noise. This is like the weird kind of synth humming that you die to. And
yeah.
yeah, when I did die a few times. The game is not that easy in some spots, but
Hmm.
yeah, there and if I recall correctly, there were BioWare staffers who were brought in from the Mass Effect team.
Hmm.
Either the team working on the new Mass Effect or the team that was working on Andromeda or parts of those teams, like staffers from there, were brought in to help kind of land the Veilguard after EA sort of rebooted its development into a single player game.
Yeah,
Because
but you
as
definitely
we
feel that influence on it because of the way that like you're only playing like the rook, and then your companions, whenever their school cooldowns are up, you can actually like order them, hey, do this, and then you can actually order them to like cast abilities or heals and whatever, but you're not taking direct control of them, much like Mass Effect, later Mass Effect was, in that respect, where you're not fully playing them, you're ordering them to
yeah.
do stuff.
Yeah, actually, they really aren't that much like they're a lot like Mass Effect um companions in that you kind of see them. I mean, in gameplay terms, you just kind of see them as extra ability slots, and then they're your accessory. Like what's that term from the shooter games? Your options.
Mhm.
Your
What
loadout.
was it? Yeah, like
Yeah.
like part of your loadout. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you're it's like a part of your loadout you can date, but um, yeah, and then yeah, like an extra set of abilities, even like from Mass Effect, and actually also as I mentioned in the review, also from Anthem, the one of the central. I wouldn't say it's central because you can kind of get away without it, but there's one of the signature combat mechanics is like primers and detonators, and that's
Yeah.
straight out of Andromeda, if I remember correctly, and also out of Anthem, where you
Mhm.
hit them with kind of a specific kind of debuff. Then you hit them with another power that detonates it, and then the whole thing explodes and does a lot of damage.
Yeah, so
Um,
this was an interesting thing. Like, as I was, watching my friend play it, and like as we're learning together, some of the systems in the Veilguard where, eventually you'll get the option to like kind of you don't have to pop up that menu to do the abilities. You can just like kind of order your teammates and your abilities on the fly in combat. But if you want to do something like setting up like a primer and detonator, like something more fine tuned to like ability chain, then that's when that freeze menu with all the radio menu stuff come together where you're kind of where it shows you in that menu, hey, you have like an ability chain or I forgot what it's called, um opportunity available to you.
yeah,
So you
a
you like
combo
you
opportunity.
yes, yeah. And then you choose that and then it's like linking you to the arrow of like, hey, this is you chose the primer, we're gonna direct you to the detonator, so you put boom boom, then towards this target. So you're like almost kinda freezing battle mid combat to do like a more turn based option before you let it go.
Yeah, I was actually glad for that radio menu, and I'm also glad that it doesn't just slow down time like it's been in some other games. It actually just freezes the game. It's like a
Hmm.
pause button because um there one of the things I was less positive about and that I also mentioned in the review is that it's kind of hard to read the combat. It's action. I mean, it's like action game based, and there are hit indicators, there's dodge indicators and stuff like that. Um, but the indicators are kind of hard to read because there's a lot of visual effects kind of clogging it out. So like you kind of the notification to dodge is this little yellow kind of you get a bit of a halo effect, like an aura around your head, and that's
Yeah,
hard to see when you're a mage.
yeah. See,
You're just I'm just throwing fire all over the place, and like wait, oh, it's a
yeah.
yellow. I gotta
I
get the
feel like
hit.
that's definitely like a mileage will vary. May vary on like on class selection because like my friend chose the warrior and he was starting to spec towards the reaper subclass and he specialized in two-handed weapons, never touched the sword and shield, and just did like the hammer into axe, the great axe type of deal. So, but a lot of
Mhm.
his like combat flow and options were based on like parrying. So like the readability on that for him was like better than like what I imagine it's like mage classes where there's like fire everywhere. But there's definitely like because that indicator isn't like great because like it's only
Mhm.
around your head. It's not a big indicator, and like you need to know on that indicator whether it's yellow or red because red you can't parry. But
Mhm.
you'll know a red attack is coming because some I guess early game enemies do like a big wind up like the big there's like these big warriors that like kind of do like an overhead swing
Oh
and like
yeah, yeah.
when they're doing that overhead swing animation they'll start having like a red aura around them already to know that like hey unparryable attack animation is coming. So
Mhm.
like if you're not so you're gonna assume that like okay that's the only thing I have to look out for every other attack you can safely assume after fighting a few that like you can parry those but yeah I imagined like for more busier special effects visual effects classes that's hard to see. I can see where you're
Yeah,
coming
it
from.
is definitely. It was for me. I was. Oh,
Mhm,
by the way, I was a mage. My rook
mhm.
is a mage, and yeah, and as a mage, I had a heck of a time trying to dodge that stuff. But one thing that's nice, also nice about this, it's that it's kind of the game is kind of accessibility minded. There's some advanced difficulty tuning. I mean, it's got the settings and stuff, but you can kind of tweak things as you feel like. And at a couple of points I tried playing around with it. I mean, I completed the game on normal, but for the review. But like, if I were just completely free to do whatever I liked, I did like enjoy widening the timing a bit on the parries and dodges, and that helped a lot with the readability because you can because when it's a bit more forgiving, you can sort of see it's the readability is easier to deal with.
Yeah. I also thought
How
that the
about
way. Oh, go for it, Brian.
I was gonna say, like, how about the UI in general? I know it seems like talk about the UI, how exciting. But I remember when we first got some screenshots of the combat, it wasn't really received well. I know on this podcast we kind of compared it to like Xenoblade 2 in terms of like UI clutter. But it's one of those things where it's like, do you acclimate to it, or does it kind of stay busy, or maybe you just don't even notice it, so it's fine? Like, any thoughts on that?
It's It's fine, honestly. I
Okay.
did think it's a bit the control wise. I was using a gamepad. It did seem a bit squirrely to. I mean, the selecting from the radial menu was a bit oversensitive, but that's just a really minor thing. You just get used to it after a few tries. The UI is definitely much more, what's the word? What's much more like gamey, because like as Josh one pointed out, they kind of when you set up a combo, they really indicate to you which power you wanna hit to set
Like
off that
like
combo.
arcadey almost, I
Yeah,
guess.
almost arcadey. And I think honestly that's kind of a good thing because in its sense it's a bit cluttered, but it does improve once you learn to read it. It gets more. It's easier to read because like I have played games where they tried to do a sort of, what's the word? Like a natural UI, and that kind of came at the sacrifice of readability. And it doesn't look as great in screen. It looks better in screens in stills, but Dragon Age is easy to read once it's taught you how. So I'd have no real complaints.
Yeah, it
Okay.
also helps that because one of my initial concerns was I don't like the design of the radio menu, but once you really get into it, you rarely have to see it because at first I thought every time you wanted to cast an ability, whether it was your own or party members, you have to pull up that UI, and I'm like, man, that's really gonna like bog down game flow, and it's always gonna be freezing combat. But there's actually like hotkey options not only for
Oh yeah,
yourself to
yeah.
cast those, but for other party members as well. So if you're not setting up like a primer detonator combo, you can just like say you have a character that heals, you can just like hotkey their heal on the fly without having to bring up that UI, so you never have to freeze down combat. I think the only time you really need to bring up that radio menu is if you really want to do that primer detonator combo, like maybe a tankier enemy in the game. So it's like it when they first showed it, I was like, I feel like that's gonna really break up the pace of combat. Once things are get going in that game, I think you rarely really have to ever see it. You know, unless you're doing it for that specific purpose.
Yeah, pretty much. It becomes second nature after a couple of hours.
Yeah. Other than that, the rest of the UI was fine. You can definitely you have limited consumables that like you could but that you can restock. It's very easy to see like when your abilities are up and when the characters party companions ability is up. Like because you'll just have like their like icon will be like shaded out until they're ready to pop another ability that you can order them to do. Then you'll know that's ready when their icon is like normal color again. It's not shaded out, so it doesn't
Yeah,
really get in the way.
they even have sound barks like, "Oh, ready." It does
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So
So that's actually
I think the UI is pretty slick in that game. Like it doesn't get in the way of it, which is it didn't have the best first impression because of the way they demoed. I feel like the
It doesn't
initial
look good in
gameplay,
stills.
yeah, the
Yeah.
initial gameplay demonstration of this game looked not good because they demoed the first gameplay we saw of this game was the very beginning, which is like not the greatest part of the game as you already mentioned, Josh too, and also they kept showing this ability wheel. It's like, oh, it's awesome, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
this.
they
Come
kept doing
on,
the same one attack with level one rook over and over again.
yeah. It's
So
like, come on, man. So yeah,
I guess my next question is about like the larger structure of the game. It seemed like from a distance, I was expecting it to be kind of like Mass Effect 2-ish, where you have like a hub area, and then you go out on like different missions in different other locations that are almost like levels, and they're maybe narrative focused or I'm not sure. Like I read actually our founder Alex Donaldson's review on BG247 also, and he mentioned like some of the levels are more linear, some are more like mini explorable zones, but not to the level of Inquisition. Just what did you think about like the overall like structure of the game in terms of what you're doing?
Yeah. Actually, Alex had it. I also read that review as well after everything was said and done. Alex had it right. It's kind of like to me, it was based on what I remember from Inquisition. So I didn't replay the game before it, but I do remember Inquisition well. I liked it a lot. It's kind of like mini Inquisition. You've got your hub area. You've got the lighthouse, which is kind of like this extra dimensional headquarters that used to be Solas's rebel base from when the time he was fighting back against the elven gods in the prehistory and whatever. And the lighthouse is now yours. So you've got your room, and all of your companions have the rooms, and that lighthouse is like the hub. That's where you have all your major conversations. That's where you have a lot of your companion missions, and then you get quests from there, sort of, and you kind of at during like big story moments, like you gather your team around the table and you have kind of conversation, like here's what's going to go down, and then you go out into the world because this lighthouse is, I mean, the justification is the lighthouse is at the center, is in the middle of the fade, and it's connected. It's got this big special like elven mirror that they use to teleport to any other elven mirror all over the world. So like Solus had a special elven mirror that basically allows them to teleport more or less anywhere they need to. And so that you go out from there, and then in theory you're sort of passing through this kind of what's the word, liminal, this between dimension, but later on you just um unlock fast travel, so you can go back and forth to the lighthouse to wherever you want. And you're kind of going to these different regions scattered all over the northern Thedas. And yeah, and after a story mission sort of introduces the area to you, a bigger zone gets unlocked as an exploration zone, and that's just the big zone. It's not as big as Inquisitions, which thank goodness. Inquisition
Yeah.
was like a quasi MMO, sort of like they had this huge world, lots of stuff all over the place. These zones are a little bit more. They're big, but they're more compact, and they're a lot more. Linear is not the right word for it because you can kind of explore the zone freely. In fact, you can go into a lot of places that aren't even marked for anything, and then later on you'll get a quest where you go, "Oh, okay, I've been there. I was just there. I was just poking around looking for treasure." And but then in this corner there's a quest. So it's like this big. I think the best analogy is the patrol zones in Destiny. Like in Destiny, there's a patrol zone, and there's all kinds of places there, and none of them really matter. And sometimes there's enemies and there's treasures and things to find, but for the most part, it's just kind of an empty zone, and nothing there matters until there's a quest associated with it, where it takes you to that corner or to this corner for a different quest. And that's kind of how it is. And this is sort of where I felt like, oh, okay, I see they were trying until this point they had generated this zone for the live service game. This was going to be a patrol zone, and but they
Oh,
made
that's
it into a
interesting.
single player.
Hmm.
Because
I,
yeah,
I, I had
'cause
heard the reporting and the murmurs from reputable people that this was going to be a multiplayer live service sorts of
yeah.
game, but the fact that you can actually kind of identify it while playing it too. Huh.
That's
Yeah, like
funny.
I mean, I'm a Destiny player, so like this sort of oh, okay, this is a patrol zone, right, right. And I don't, I mean, they've changed the structure enough that I wouldn't necessarily be able to see how it works exactly as a patrol zone. Like, would there be a lot more enemies if this had in fact been a live service game? Because like there aren't a lot of random encounters in those places. Like you'll see them, and like they're like each zone kind of has designated spots where fights happen, where oh, in this little arena shaped place there will always be one group of enemies that you can go beat up. But Like I don't really they've changed it enough that it doesn't it doesn't feel like a live service game that they've taken offline. But you can sort of see the bones of it here and there if you've played enough.
But there's definitely a cadence of like point A to point B. Like once you go like
Oh
into a
yeah.
zone for the first time, like you can just like basically almost travel straight to the next story beat and treat that
Hmm.
as like a more like cosmetic hallway towards it
Yeah,
if you wanted to.
that's kind of where I felt, yeah, and that's actually one of the places I felt the most oh okay, this really is more of an action game this time. Where because like in Dragon Age Origins, you're just full of moving around the map. It's kind of like Baldur's Gate where you're kind of uncovering little bits of it here and there, and then you're just kind of meandering around a lot. But here it's definitely there's really no reason for you not to follow the marker all the way until the end of the mission. Like I was taking notes for to do to potentially turn into like a quick walkthrough type of deal for guides and stuff later. And like this is a bit of inside baseball for writing for the websites, but yeah, it's like I was taking notes and then okay, I guess I could turn this into a quest guide. And I realized all of my notes were like follow the marker and have a few fights, and at the end you'll make a choice.
I remember
Follow
reading
the
that.
marker.
Yeah,
Follow the
yeah,
marker. Follow the marker.
yeah. And there's nothing like uncovering the map because once you get into the map, like you kind of see where you need to go, like the explorable places you can walk through, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you do uncover the map a bit, like section sort of section by section. Like each fast travel node is sort of a section of the map,
Okay.
and and then like as you go, and there are places that you can see where they're like where later on you'll get a quest that unlocks this part of the map, and then you can go through there and then explore that area more freely later. So it kind of unlocks progressively as the game goes on.
It definitely is
Um,
worth exploring to some extent, though, because
oh
like
yeah, yeah.
some of those because there's treasure chests you can find, and the
So
really
many treasure
interesting
chests.
thing, yeah, the really interesting thing that I found that this game to do is like is equipment, where you can get duplicates of the same equipment, but it'll actually have like a gameplay effect. So let's say you have like these dragon pants, and they're white rarity. If you find another dragon pants, it'll turn into green rarity, which will up its stats. But more importantly, there's like these two additional like effect modifiers on it. Let's say like there's these two locked effect modifiers. Like the first one's like defense plus 25%, and the next modifier is like this specific skill, like say dragon breath. You can it splits off two ways, for example. That's the effect that it has. So when you first get like your first dupe of these dragon pants, you unlock that defense plus 25%, and then that'll turn to green rarity. And then if you find another dragon pants, you'll up its rarity again, and then unlock that second gameplay modifier on it. And I thought that was just really cool that the way they did the armor duplicates in this game, where like there's actually um, gameplay incentive that might even define your build
Oh
almost
yeah,
on
yeah.
that.
It actually is really kind of pretty big because later on you can especially once you get some of those pieces to like legendary and you've unlocked all of their perks, they you can build around them. And once you've got them, I mean like you I as a mage, I was kind of like the spell blade, which is kind of like the melee mage
Mhm.
where I use an orb and a knife, and I then I found a knife later on that was that basically allowed my the orb and knife can do kind of an arcane bomb, which is like a mechanic where you hit him a few times with your light attack and it builds up a stack of this debuff or this marks, and then when the three of those marks turn into a bomb, and if you hit it with a heavy attack, the bomb explodes and does extra damage. The This knife I found, and I eventually found enough duplicates to upgrade it to the legendary rarity from vendors and from chests and stuff. It Whenever you set off an arcane bomb, it does critical damage, and it hits them with an elemental debuff based on the element of the orb that you hit them with. So
Mm.
that's like that was great, and I was using it all the time in the late game. I mean, in the middle of the game, in the mid to late game, because like that was my build. Like I would hit them a bunch with the with the arcane bomb. It would stack up. huge stacks of I believe it was the shock debuff. And because I had so many passives that were set up so that I could do extra damage to shocked enemies and take less damage from shocked enemies and so on and so forth. And whenever I hit an enemy with shock, they got hit with burning at the same time. So that became kind of like my build. It's my shocked and burning build type of thing.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
was
that's
all
really cool.
revolved around having that one knife. And then one time I switched to a different knife and the build completely collapsed.
And that's really interesting because that kind
Yeah,
of
it's super interesting.
this dupe system kind of backs up your theory and Adam's theory of like this at one time what kind of games have like this emphasis on dupes, kind of live service
Yeah,
games,
service games.
so you know
I mean,
uh,
just rare colored rarity. Well, no, colored rarity is not exclusive to service games. I mean, single player like Diablo had colored rarity before games were even online.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of games have rarity now, and the games that do have them, a lot of them are service games. And you can
Yeah.
kind of see it's like, if this were a service game, would I be buying a loot box that gave me dupes? And would I
Mm.
be happy about that? You kind of get these dark
Yeah,
thoughts about it, sort of.
like yeah, but
But
Let's
then
be
again,
fair
unfortunately,
here. Let's be fair here. It's not
yeah,
service
yeah,
games that invented this.
right.
We have to
yeah,
blame
that's
Randy
true.
Pitchford for this because it was Borderlands.
Yeah, that's
um,
right. But yeah, you feed the
I'm glad
knife
they
to your
definitely
other
made it work.
knife.
Yeah, they definitely made it work, right? So like they were able
Yeah,
to like back away from that, turn this to a more traditional single player structure, and
yeah,
like have
yeah,
have a compelling way to kind of still explore around and obtain these things and feel like you have a really great power progression and we're able to. There's some that there's actually like forms of like player expression in this in the way that you want to build because it's not just like these duplicates that you can find and then unlock these bonuses. There's also like this kind of more like intimate skill tree. It's not Path of Exile level, but there's definitely like a fairly complex skill tree that has like you get skill points when you level up. There's a lot of nodes, and then there's three like specializations that you can kind of like work your way towards that will further define like your ability set, your toolkit around it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot. Like each class has multiple specializations and a lot of a fair amount of build potential. I haven't really explored the full skill tree and seen every possible build. I'm sure some sickos will be able to get some much more out of it than I would have in my limited time. But definitely like there you get enough skill points to kind of explore these multiple ways to play the same character, sort of
And it's free
based on your
respec, so
specialization and your picks.
yeah, and if you don't like the decisions that you made, you can just respect at any
Yeah.
time, either on a per node basis or a full overall at no resource cost. So you can just do
Yes,
it at
yes,
any.
that was also pretty good. I kind of liked it compared to. I mean, I'm kind of bringing up Final Fantasy 16 again, but I think I feel like they have more in common in the sense of like they were sort of action game expressions of what used to be of what is traditionally an RPG sort of game.
Mm.
Um, FF14 kind of did FF16, excuse me, did the did this thing with point buying, right? And it was a little bit fiddly, if you ask me. Whereas this just 1 point, one skill, and then you kind of fill out the nodes, kind of like a sphere grid. And that worked to me a lot. It felt a lot simpler to me, and
Yeah,
that worked well.
it's also kind of interesting because you really can't do a one build fits all. I think you really do have to uh commit to like a certain role in combat, like because there's different sort of like resistances that enemies have. Like you'll have the armor that
Hmm.
enemies have that you'll have to use heavy attacks on to for bonus damage. But then there's also barriers that enemies can have as well. And you know you won't have all the necessary skills to shred barriers, but other party members might have like entire they have like miniature skill trees that like you can spec them into. They're not as uh filled out as yours, but they still have like their own mini skill trees that they can fill out. And some of them can like you can like expect this to be like, okay, I want this person to really specialize on shredding barriers. So you can actually like still feel like you have some sort of camaraderie chemistry with your companions, even though it's all action and turn based, you can't really control them directly. You could still have them be that like, hey, this party member of mine, they're the dedicated healer. When they heal, they give me a lot of bonuses up per heal, and then this other person is like they shred barriers like cheese, easy.
Yeah, definitely. It's like yeah, it's I mean, yeah, it's easy to think of the party members as extra abilities, but also you kind of set them up to fit your own play style. Um and actually I was changing skills pretty frequently because like as each enemy type kind of has different resistances and stuff. So, like if I was fighting undead, I'd spec for necrotic damage. If I was fighting like darkspawn, I'd spec for fire damage, and I'd bring along my Grey Warden buddy and stuff like that, Davrin, with
Mhm.
his pet griffin. And so yeah, it's like you can change it frequently. Although I did kind of end up wishing that it had loadouts, like saved loadouts, because in order to change your spec, you kind of have to refund each point one by one, and that takes a while. I mean, that
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
can take
ask
a
you if
while,
there's any
especially if you
loadout.
like
Yeah,
change. I kind of wish they are. Maybe for a future patch, I hope
yeah,
that to save some people some time. But yeah, like loadouts for you and your team would be really great because then you could kind of switch your teams out based like on threats or builds and stuff like that. That would be a good thing too, because as freely as they make it, that it is one minor annoyance where you kind of have to back up back. You can kind of refund all the points at once, but that still means you need to buy the node one by one
yeah.
again.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and there's also just in general, like you're not confined by like just like the whims of like your build alone. You can actually like use the environment to your advantage too. Like there's actually like real positional blowback damage. Like for example, like fights on cliffs. Like your warrior, a warrior will have like their first skill be like this big drop kick, and you can just like kind of end fights or enemies instantly by just like just drop kicking them off a cliff nearby. Like there's actually like they're not like bound by like invisible walls in arenas or whatever. Like you can actually just use the environment fully to your advantage. If there's like an open cliff nearby or something they can fall off of, you can just like drop kick them off of that if they're small enough as well. Which is just kind of it's like just cool small details to combat um, that just really add to it. Um, so I was actually kind of like whenever I end up picking up this game, like I'm just gonna I just really like knowing that, like, hey, it's like actually pretty fun to play this game and like building out characters and stuff like that. There seems to be a lot of thought put into the gameplay systems that I
yeah,
appreciated.
yeah. I did appreciate that definitely. It doesn't kind of feel like and the build like and the skill builds and the progression. It definitely still feels like an action RPG, an RPG in that sense. It doesn't kind of once again, I'm bringing up an FF16 comparison, but it does feel like a where FF16 kind of felt like it was trying to hold on to the progression and it didn't really work out that way. Dragon Age sort of manages to hold on to it in a more meaningful way, and it feels like it was a necessary bit. Um,
Yeah, I
because
haven't
this
been
isn't
playing
Devil
this
May
yet.
Cry. Like this isn't Devil May Cry. This isn't the same as I haven't played Dragon's Dogma 2 actually, but this isn't the same as Dragon's Dogma 1 either. But they've been able to hold on to it in a way that helps progression still matter. It doesn't feel like oh you were holding on to this because it's Final Fantasy. I mean supposed to technically be an RPG,
For what it's
but
worth, when they first showed this game at Summer Game Fest, like that demo section, um, a lot of people were throwing around Final Fantasy 16 comparisons just based on that glimpse. So, like, it's definitely, there's definitely some similarities that are observable.
yeah.
Did you have something to say, James? Like you wanted to?
No, the only thing I was gonna say is that I wouldn't even necessarily agree that like 16 even felt like it was trying to keep that progression, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
neither here nor there.
Mhm. But okay, so we kind of got like pretty positive on the gameplay side of it. How did you feel about just the general like character interactions, dialogue options, like just general the writing side of it, and like being able to like like Dragon Age is really known for like character interactions and the dialogue option.
I think in spots there were. I think it kind of shows that they'd been working on this game for a really long time and had to change it significantly. So, like, it doesn't always flow as well as it needs to, especially in parts of the main narrative. Like, things happen kind of doesn't don't always feel like they're happening in the right order. Like you first you get your big mission to I mean, it's the game kind of proceed the let me just organize my thought a bit.
Yeah, no problem.
The main narrative does flow in kind of a linear way. Like you get your big mission, you've got this kind of this one objective, find like right after from the prologue onwards, like you've fouled up this ritual. Bad things are the escaped elven gods have escaped, and your next step is to we have to find this dagger. This dagger that Solus used during his ritual, because that's the key to getting these to finding some more information. So find the dagger, go to this place, then this is where you kind of meet your first party member. Then, we need some more people to help with this. So we'll recruit a couple more party members and so on and so forth. Then you do a big mission. And then that's kind of this mission has I'm trying to be as spoiler free as possible. This mission has a really big choice that you make that's very permanent for the rest of the game. And I think that's good. That's actually a very Dragon Age thing, sort of. Um, and it doesn't always feel like it happens in the same order, because during this time, as you do these missions, including like side quests that you pick up here and there, um, you do it, and then when you kind of go out into the world and you do the missions, and when you come back, the game sort of highlights who you can talk to. That's I mean, like when you get back to the lighthouse, to your base. Oh, you look at the map, or if you just check in with your buddies. This person has kind of an icon over their room. That means that you can have a conversation with them. This person's got an icon over their room, but the icon is like shaped like a clock. It's got a bit of a clock thing to it. That means that if you let too many missions pass by before you talk to them, you won't be able to have that conversation anymore. So it kind of like going back and forth to your home base is what sort of advances time in the game. I mean, there's not really a time system, but like that's how it sort of sets up. This is going to be your next companion mission, and you can kind of go through it really quickly in some ways. If you just kind of go back every time you complete a side quest, and then you set up whatever new conversations you can have, you can kind of not finish, but you can kind of get a ways through a lot of weird side content that feels like it wouldn't be revealed until much later. Because I mentioned earlier a crossroads area, like a liminal space where you pass through. And that's kind of an important place because in the Fade, because it's in the Fade, it's like the realm of dreams and memories and stuff. You can find the memories of Solas, and not gonna say what happens there, but like some of the most important stuff in all of Dragon Age lore happens in some of these quests in that liminal space, and they're completely optional. And if you don't do them, I mean, if you do them, you suddenly get these seismic changes to, oh wait, everything I knew about Dragon Age is not wrong, but very changed. And this was an optional side quest that doesn't have a lot of bearing on what ending you get at the end of the game. And that's sort of weird to me, where I feel like if they had been making a single player game from the start, if this had been the original Dragon Age 4, they would be kind of placing it in a different way. And yeah, you can sort of see this sort of awkwardness in the way the narrative is kind of flows together. But at the same time, like there's a lot of moments there that are really up there with the best of, to me at least, to the best of Dragon Age. Like the character interactions are really good. Like if there's something that they took from Mass Effect in that sense, is that they made the characters really feel like they've got, well, not even really Mass Effect. Like the best part of Dragon Age 2 was where you felt like you were living in that city of Kirkwall, and then that your friends were kind of like they had their own lives that were progressing alongside yours. And it sort of feels that way with they've sort of brought that sense back in, because like you read some lore entries, and there's the Veilguard started a bit of a book club during the time that you've been fighting these gods, and you have conversations with them. They have conversations with each other, and then if you've romanced one character, the other characters start hooking up with each other in some spots and in some pairs, and so on. And like it's like they I wouldn't say they feel real, but they feel realized in a way that you don't even get in some of the Mass Effect games, in some and nor in some of the Dragon Age games. Like I can't remember every companion in Dragon Age Origins, but I kind of feel like I would remember these guys. So yeah,
I
I'm
think
pretty positive on the character writing.
I think speaking more generally, sometimes you get RPGs where it feels like characters only exist to either further the main character story or to further just the plot in general, where they're just like they almost feel like they don't actually exist as like a character in this world. It's more just like I am a tool to move the plot along or something like that,
Hmm.
or whatever. Where it feels like here is a little bit more realized than that. So
Yeah. In fact, they even get bits of their own like story. Um, and then like it's sort of funny like as when you finish their first recruitment, when you recruit them for the first time, like as the mission ends and fades out before you kind of like end up back at the lighthouse to welcome your new buddy. They have this brief in animated cutscene um, narrated by Varric, where that sort of previews the next episode in that character's story. It's like, oh, we recruited this elven Bilara, this elven scholar, but little did we know her demons would come back to haunt her, and then it would be this sinister thing about the further adventures of Bilara. And I think some of these parts would have been like character seasons if this had been a live. Once again, I'm speculating, but like, oh hey, it's the Bilara season
let's go
episode
the Balar
two,
season.
season two of the Veilguard, featuring Bilara, or featuring Lucanus or whoever. And then like, okay, I kind of see where you were going with this, but it's and then they come out but they'd already narrated this cutscene, and that's how it went. But there, yeah, it's sort of episodic in that sense, and I kind of like how it works out. Um, it doesn't always, like I said, the flow is a bit messy, but its heart is really in the right place, and it made whatever writing they did for these characters, and whether or not that was for the live service game or not, it kind of works out here to make them feel like they've got their own arcs. They've all got like an arc, and you as Rook have influence on their arcs. You can kind of nudge them here and there to decide how they make their decisions, or even kind of I'm gonna spoil like the start of Harding's personal story, and her story is kind of like she's kind of in Dragon Age world, in the Dragon Age story, dwarves can't use magic, because it's never really explained in any of the previous games. But dwarves can't use magic for whatever reason, and they don't dream because like magic is what comes from the dream dimension, the Fade, and they're not connected to it. And then dwarves can't use magic, but l- for some reason, and early on in the game, you get Harding, your dwarf companion, is able to use. It suddenly gets the ability to use magic, and she doesn't make her a mage, but she gets to use some kind of special magic. And part of her story is exploring that stuff, and yeah, and then like things go for as you progress through her story, you can as Rook, you can kind of encourage her. You can decide how you want to encourage her to interact with this. Is this kind of weird to you? Is this wrong, or is it like a gift? and then this kind of has impacts a little bit later on, where Harding's attitude is influenced by your dialogue choices 2 or 3 quests ago, and yeah, it feels like they have a big. Each character sort of has an arc that you can influence as the protagonist, and that feels realized to me in
There's
in
actually
a
a side quest in the original game where there's a dwarf girl that you can basically say she wants to try to learn how to use magic,
oh yeah,
and
yeah, right,
you
in
can either
Inquisition 2,
basically
right.
convince her to like go to the Magi Tower or whatever, or basically say forget it. Um, in that game, it's just like a little side quest, but
Mhm.
so
Yeah, so I guess it's been back and forth in the lore here. I mean, in the Dragon Age lore of why they can't use magic, and uh, um, yeah, and it's explored in much more depth here in the Veilguard.
Who are your favorites when you're done with the game? Like, who are your favorite characters?
So far, some of my favorites have been like one I think Harding has gotten a good thing. She was a kind of a favorite character for some Inquisition fans for a reason. Like this little NPC had a surprising amount of dialogue and was super nice, and then her story was good. But I think one of my favorites was Nev Gallus. She's kind of
Hmm.
like sort of like a wizard Sherlock Holmes, sort of like they sort of cast her as a detective in Minrathos in Tevinter, and she has a lot of her story kind of involves kind of like how a lot of your interactions with her, because my rook for the review period was a shadow dragon, my faction choice, um, and so that meant my rook was sort of a native of Tevinter, and in some ways, she's actually also a member of the same organization as Nev Gallus. These shadow dragons, they're kind of like a resistance group that's anti-slavery and trying to bring more popular representation, like popular rule to. They're sort of trying to democratize isn't the right word, but they're kind of bringing more rule for the people to the Tevinter Imperium, and then so you're sort of in a way your colleagues, and you have a lot of interactions with Nev. Her name's Nev Gallus again. If I didn't mention that before, but you have a lot of interactions with her based on your shared affiliation with the Shadow Dragons. And actually, that's actually an interesting thing because the game reflects your faction choices a lot, like at almost every level. Not quite every level, but in almost every portion of the game, there's some sort of association with the factions choices that you make at the start of the game. So like if you chose to be like an Antivan Crow, you'd have a lot of interactions when you go to that part of the game where you're with Antiva and you're interacting with the crows, and when you're interacting with one of your companions who is also himself a crow, his Lucanus. And so during my run as Rook with being a shadow dragon, like yeah, she had a lot of interactions with Nev, thanks to their shared affiliation. I mean, like eventually, I think I romanced Nev during that part of the game. So
Nice.
yeah,
Mhm.
and her story has a lot to do with like you're a detective, but this city is like really Minrathos is like one of the worst cities ever. So it's a really corrupt city, and then so kind of what how much are you really doing if you're doing this if you're just one person trying to make the city better, and
Mhm.
you can kind of nudge her one way or the other, deciding about how to make things better for people in one of one of technically the most evil places in the Dragon Age lore, and I kind of connected with that a bit.
so even the original Mass Effect has a like you set your background to the to your Commander Shepard, but I feel like its actual impact on the game is very minimal. It's like
Yeah,
I don't know, a half
it's like
dozen
yeah,
conversations.
it's like you were a spacer once. Now
Yeah.
go do your mission.
Yeah.
I think it's just I think so far from what I've seen, like, I've seen a good chunk of this game, but like I think the thing that really doesn't that kind of rubs me the wrong way, but it's because we're in the modern times. Like, there's definitely a layer of like Marvel writing, I guess I would put it in this game. Like, it's very a lot of the ways that characters interact with each other and the ways that, like, lines come across. It's very influenced by like how the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the cadence of like the interactions in those movies. Like, it's very much in that kind of writing style with a little bit of it, while having like that the aesthetic of like a Pixar film almost. So, like, I think that's
I
just
get that.
yeah. I think that's the
Like, I
one thing
get
that
that.
really that's definitely the
It's
one
a
thing that like kind of
modern
rubs me the
game, and
wrong
they
way.
kind of talk in some modern ways that don't entirely seem to align with how Dragon Age has presented itself in the past. Although personally, I think like this is a kind of a hazy memory of Origins. Maybe Adam, you could say a bit more about this. But like, you have two choices of voice in Dragon Age: The Veilguard. It's either a fantasy British accent, or actually, according to Alex Donaldson in his review, it's a proper Northern accent, but or a Mass Effect American. And if I recall correctly, in Dragon Age, like the dwarves have always spoken with American accents. Is that correct? I mean, do you remember that's
Yeah, I don't remember the dwarves ever sounding like, yeah, not
British?
I mean, the only thing I remember is that the dwarf whose name I forget in Origins is voiced by Steve Blum, who sounds like
yeah,
Steve Blum.
yeah,
Like that's
Steve Blum accent.
like
So it's
he's
like,
American. So, hang on.
yeah, but there definitely are like some modern there's definitely some use of modern language and cadence there that is a bit of a departure from previous Dragon Age games, which have tried to be a little bit more high fantasy, um, uh, high fantasy about it. I think it still works because I mean, and the tone is also definitely lighter than previous games. Like people, especially in the early game, everyone is nice to each other in the early game. You haven't really met the spicier companion. I mean, it waits until you're a few hours in before it gets you some more friction, and so that's definitely gonna rub some folks the wrong way, especially since Dragon Age kind of started out presenting itself as this, oh, we're the hardcore, we want to make a BioWare wants to make this kind of hardcore fantasy, low fantasy that's inspired by a Song of Ice and Fire and stuff, and we have this Nine Inch Nails song in our marketing, and like, yeah, the some of the early complaints about the trailers being very Overwatch, I think they're not really that accurate, but they're not completely baseless, is what I'm gonna say. It worked for
It is.
me, but I can see
It
why it
has
wouldn't
been
work for some
interesting
others.
to see like the trajectory of those Dragon Age Origins and 2 marketing, where they like made the theme of blood, like they're like, blood is cool, right? We're gonna do the logo in red and inspired by blood.
Literally a
Characters are just
blood
gonna keep the
dragon.
blood. Yeah, they're gonna, and in Dragon Age 2, when characters get blood all over their face, they're just gonna keep it there as they have a 10-minute conversation
Oh yeah,
afterwards.
I remember that
And
being a marketing point in the previews. It's like,
like,
yeah,
we're
it's like
not
there
censored,
are
we're
the
hardcore. This
cutscenes covered in blood.
Yeah, they'll just talk for like 15 minutes in that old style. Just like, just can you just like wipe your face, just wipe your brow, please? Like, it's all over you, dude. I don't know. And now it's like Josh said, a little bit more of kind of like that snippy, quippy um trailer voice for like the Marvel style. But it sounds like it's not, it works to some extent. Maybe it's not what you have come to know Dragon Age to be or expect it to be, but it sounds like it's fine.
I saw
Yeah.
someone playing through the original Dragon Age not too long ago, a few months ago, and they were talking about Alistair, who's like one of the main companions in the game, possibly the very first one you get. And his takeaway was, I bet this guy was really popular before games and movies made every guy sound like him. Because Alistair sort of has that kind of like, kind of, he kind of has this veil of like this self-depreciating, jokey kind of veneer It's a little bit Marvelish, not too much, but like before that was a thing.
But it's
So
like when most of the cast adopts that, it kind of, I've grown pretty tired of the every character is very sarcastic and jokey and winking at the camera and like being snarky. It's like it was fine when when earlier times had like that all character for that, but when it's like your entire cast because of what's popular in Hollywood, that's kind of like what I biggest misgivings in modern media, really.
I don't think it's the whole cast, but a couple of characters are definitely like that is that's their personality. I mean, not Alistair, but they are definitely like quippy. Like there's and one of the characters who's been sort of a lightning rod for people's reactions lately is Tosh. She's like a Kunari, and she talks like a 20-year-old who's living with her mom, which is actually kind of what she is. Uh, you get to meet her mom, and and the Kunari have been. I think that's one of the reasons. Like, there's been a big departure. Tosh talks kind of like a young person who is struggling with with their identity, and and that's a big departure from how Kunari have been portrayed before. Because most of the Kunari characters that you encounter in Dragon Age have been very serious. They don't speak with contractions, and Tosh is deliberately kind of a departure from that because she lives outside that system. Although in Inquisition, at the same time, there was also the Kunari character was voiced by what's his name, Freddie Prinze Jr. So and was a very casual sort of person and presented himself as an outsider from that system. So it's not like the only time that's happened. But
It's also like
yeah.
not even getting the character itself. It's like they've definitely redesigned what the Kunari look
Mhm.
like.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and me
Like
with my Dragon Age Origins perspective, when I think of Kunari, I think of Sten, who was in the first game,
yeah,
and
it's just like a big dude.
he's
He
basically a
just looks
boulder.
tall.
He's basically a
He just
boulder, and he's just like, "Why are you talking to me?"
Yeah.
He's all about utility, and he's like, "If you don't have
Yeah.
anything useful to say, then stop talking."
He's like a big guy and who's sort of adjacent to Worf.
This isn't
Yeah.
here or there, but I found this kind of amusing. You know Andrea, right? She used to write for us. I think she does Destructoid now.
Yeah.
She was
No,
playing
she
Dragon
left
Age.
recently.
Oh, she's no longer. Oh, right, she did quit Destructoid.
She resigned in solidarity with like
Okay.
Anyways, she was
like
playing
the
Dragon Age
recent-
Origins, and she was very amused with Sten. Wanted to kiss him, but Sten wouldn't like that.
So
Sometimes you gotta play hard to get.
yeah, but in general, Josh, too, just like I guess we talked a lot about praise for the gameplay, and and he felt very strongly positively for the most part about the characters' interactions and so forth. I think like what are your biggest like issues with the game overall as you're coming away from it?
Definitely the mess. It's like it is a messy game. Not that it doesn't work, but it's like you can see the seams all over the place. Like I said, the structure doesn't always work. Like, oh, okay. I just noticed something. Okay, this is gonna be kind of not really. I'm not gonna spoil it, but a big moment happens that has permanent consequences, and a lore pop and then the Veilguard has a lot of lore pop ups, sort of like a lot of places where you kind of might have expected a side conversation between two NPCs. This kind of shows up as a lore pop up. I think that's how they can fill in some of the side material. Anyway, so a lot of that sort of pops up immediately after immediately after a major moment, and this major moment happens with permanent consequences, and a lore pops up, a bit of lore pops up, and it's for the opposite consequence.
Hmm.
So, like, I'll just make up an example. Like, oh, Bob died, and then, but you could have made the choice and then let Sarah die, but suddenly the lore pops up, and it's like, oh, I miss Sarah so much, and It's messy in that way. Like, and stuff's happening out of order. Like you've got, I mentioned a lore pop up about a book club between the Veil members of the Veilguard and they're all they're all discussing the books they're reading, but they're discussing the books they're reading with characters that haven't joined the party yet.
Oof.
So yeah, it's
That
really
yeah,
messy.
it's
Parts of
also
it, it's a bit pop. You can very tell. I mean, like maybe it's just because I've played a lot of games, and maybe because I've followed the development of this game. But you can tell that it's kind of Frankenstein together from the shattered pieces of a project. I mean, that's kind of like I feel strongly that I really like what I've seen, but it is not a game that was put together in a very smooth way, and it's so obvious, and then it's kind of a miracle that it works as well as it did. But oh wow, it's real. It's like you had a hard time putting this together, didn't you? And I kind of feel for them. That it's like it's basically the soul of what I'd say, what I call the strong seven, which is a game that you can't in good conscience give a very high score to, but that does a few things really nicely that you wanna root for. And I think that's how I am on Dragon Age: The Veilguard, kind of.
I will follow up on your Bob and Sarah thing because I heard about this too. Like, say like there's Bob's candy shop and Sarah's ice cream truck, and like both of them, like one of them will shut down, and you have to save one or the other's business, so to speak. So you decide I want to save Bob's candy shop and Bob because whatever you choose,
Yeah,
the
I
other
love
one has
Bob.
to be
I love his candy.
so the other one has to be let go. But even after like you like visit the remains of Sarah's ice cream truck and basically telling them to get over it, life's hard. You still get like plus reputation with the faction and the character, even though like you chose not to do them, but it still rewarded you on a gameplay aspect that you they got fucked over. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
that's
take
that's kind of like the thing that I heard. I'm like, that's kind of really weird. That's how it pans out.
yeah,
You know.
bits and pieces sticking out from where the seams are meeting and haven't been papered over all the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely a game I definitely want to play. Like I'm interested in like if not this, if I can get over the general tone of writing in the game, I think I'll have a good time with like the gameplay aspect and like actually having interesting builds and gameplay options. I think that's definitely something that at the very least they at least nailed going into this game. While you're obviously other elements of the game, your mileage may vary for sure.
No,
Definitely, like
thank you so much, Josh Tolentino, for coming on and spending 80 minutes with us talking about Dragon Age: The Veilguard. And I think we kind of covered everything. This game obviously had a lot of baggage is kind of a strong word, but it had a lot of conversations around its development, around BioWare, around its place, in terms of EA's portfolio of single player games, about Western RPGs in general, because it used to be a flagship Western RPG like IP, and then it kind of is no longer that. I think BioWare recently announced that they're not planning any DLC for Veilguard. They're going to go all hands on deck on Mass Effect, which is kind of like the next one in line, so to speak.
I hope it works out
Is
for
the
them.
Yeah,
I
basically.
I'm positive on
But,
BioWare again. And I really hope it works.
mhm.
So,
but
so I guess like do you feel that there's a strong foundation for potential future Dragon Age follow-ups? You think they have like the right team for this right now and going forward?
I honestly can't say. This project's been in the cooker for so long that I don't think whatever I'm actually not sure that what comes out of it is truly representative of what BioWare's got, like has its sights on. But whatever Dragon Age comes next, I mean, this is if you are interested in Dragon Age lore, if you like are somehow invested in where the world of Thedas is going to go, this game does go places that I mean it there's a this I mean the lore here is so some of the lore drops here are so seismic that this could very well be the last Dragon Age game if
Oh,
they don't pick up certain threads.
hmm.
I mean, they do plant some seeds for future games, but the changes that happen to the world are very seem at least seem because I mean, it is fiction, so you can always kind of work back from it. But sorry, something dropped. But some of the lore here that happens, the next Dragon Age game will be very different if they choose to build on what they've put down here.
Interesting.
Well, and
It'll
also
be a
Dragon
very
Age,
different world.
since its inception has been a multimedia IP, so story threads could be followed up in Netflix adaptations or comic
Maybe,
books
yeah.
or side stories. So they could just be sowing the seeds for that sort of approach as
Maybe,
well.
possibly. Like if you do some side stories. But yeah, there's a very a lot of core a lot of lore things that seemed core to Dragon Age in previous entries have been either resolved in some way or addressed in some way that doesn't make them that makes them kind of like, oh, this story is sort of told. Or partially told. So like, what's the new thing? And then that'll be interesting to see. I don't know if they'll get to it, but if they do,
Hopefully,
I'd
yeah.
sign on.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see like how this game does in the long run in terms of, like sales performance, because it seems like it has a really explosive start. We don't have exact numbers yet, but like say like obviously this has the highest Steam concurrence of any Dragon Age ever by a large percentage, with over 80,000 this weekend, and I assume that that number might climb higher. But also like I just want to hopefully this game does well just to make the case not only to just EA but like to publishers on PC in general, right? Because they took a big risk with this game. Like first, especially for EA, traditional single player big RPG, which is something that EA's been kind of flip flopping over. Like they kind of got convinced by the Jedi games from Respawn, um, but also going the route of like DRM free, not using the Nouveau for this release, and basically trusting the players. Like if you want to see more like more of these releases in the future, which is generally like a high quality PC port that's and totally DRM free. Hopefully, this will make the case not only to EA but to other publishers in the future that hopefully you can trust players a bit more on that end and not resorting to the Nouveau, because the Nouveau has varying effects on people. Some minimal, some more major, but there is empirical evidence that the Nouveau does impact performance of PC games.
Yeah, and even beyond that, like just DRM in general, like inherently you're adding in like an obfuscation to the game code. That's always going to have some sort of performance impact, even if it's like minor. So.
Yeah. So we'll see how this does, but I think you've made a really solid case for this game, Josh. Too. I think I'm definitely more intrigued going into it whenever I get my hands on it, and seeing where this goes. I think they pulled off something that like it feels impossible on paper. Of how do you bring Dragon Age back after a decade, right? Like how?
Yeah, it was so over. Now it's so back.
Yeah, I don't know if or when I'm gonna get to it, just because there's so many other RPGs I want to play, and frankly, I would want to play the first 3 Dragon Ages first. I feel like that's important. But yeah, I don't know when I'll get to it, but I am interested in giving a shot eventually, but probably not this year.
Yeah, that will probably take me ages. I play Inquisition like a very small amount, but I would probably go and beat that first before I would do this.
I mean, that's where I got tripped up. I'm like, I'm gonna catch up on Dragon Age before Veilguard comes out, and I beat one game, 2 more to go. So
Honestly, I think Inquisition's a good starter point. Um, like I think there's some bits about Dragon Age, like the Veilguard feel to me. The Veilguard feels like they fulfill some of the Dragon Age's 2's unfulfilled promise. Like some of the things they tried with Dragon Age 2 were fulfilled by the Veilguard. But like if you just want to get one, if you want to get sort of one game, I think honestly, Dragon Age Inquisition is a good jumping on point.
But thank you again so much, Josh, for waking up in the middle of the night your time to talk to us about Dragon Age.
Oh no, it was
Uh,
I was looking forward to it.
Yeah, so Josh, of course, also has Josh 2, that is, has a written review up on the site, rpgsite.net, that we've been referring back to. So if you want to see his words in written form, it's there as well. And I know over this weekend he's been giving a start at some guide work, some question and answers, some details about how the import works. Well, not really import, but choice selection works, and a few other things. So you'll see Josh's name on a few Dragon Age related articles up on the site, rpgsite.net.
Yes, the Veil guides.
There you go.
Yeah, and also
That's a good
Mikhail
one.
on the site also tested the game on Steam Deck, has been just doing a fantastic job on those. And even before release, this game was Steam Deck verified, and this game has like no EA Play launcher or anything like attached to it. And it seems like if you want to play this on the go, this seems like a pretty damn good, well optimized game on the Steam Deck.
I think he had a few hiccups with it, but detailed all in that post.
Yeah, yeah. There's a little bit of image quality hit like on late game, but that's
Mhm.
certainly playable. It's not like you can run this, unlike a certain other game that people
That we're going to talk about
got to
next.
play this game. Yeah, but it's up to you, Josh, too. If you wanted to stay and chat with us more about like news and other games, or if you need to head out and get some.
If it's all right with you, I think I'll be getting to sleep. I am already being bitten by my cat to try to
Yeah,
come back.
I could hear the cat, so I was like,
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You're
She
good.
was in front of the mic.
No, it's fine. Okay,
No,
have a
but
great night, man.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah,
for
thank
having
you.
me.
Thank
thank you,
you.
Josh. So once again, we do have that review up on the site, rpgsite.net. And the other game that, access to a game that came out also at the same day as Veilguard was, of course, the open beta for Monster Hunter Wilds, assuming you weren't playing on PlayStation with PlayStation Plus. So I do know that both Josh here and James put some time into Monster Hunter Wilds, the open beta. Of course, it's a big release for next February, but pretty unprecedented to have access 4 months early to a new Monster Hunter title. So we'll go ahead and pivot over into that discussion about time with the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, and we'll start with you, Josh, about your time with it. You kind of, before we started recording, gave us a little bit about your impressions of the beta and a few things that you liked and a handful of things that you thought could be better.
Yeah, I come away like I put some time into this. I made a character. I did the story thing. I hunted all the monsters in it, and then just trying out different weapons. Like I did, I really like the changes to Hammer here. Hammer feels very strong and really fun in Wilds, and did a bit of some Insect Glaive, and want to try out more like Greatsword soon. But I come away from it. I don't know. Like I feel I'm a little bit less excited for Wilds now that I know have obviously they might do further optimizations on this game in full release between because there's an open beta, there's a game in development, and but a lot of the things that you're circling around, like a lot of the discussion around this game is like this game feels very 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 unoptimized for a lot of people, even for people that have like more powerful video cards. Like I have a 5900X CPU and 3080 GPU. And
I mean, that's a
I'm running this
pretty,
on
that's maybe not top shelf, but that's a pretty damn strong system.
yeah, and I'm running this on 1440p with just the high presets. And this game is like when you're like at camp, it's like around 35 to 40, sometimes optimistically sometimes 45 FPS. And then when you're out on the field like hunting monsters, it's still around that 40 to 50 FPS range, which is actually on the better side of like most people. Some people they're struggling out there, even on like if you're like on on a 2070 2080
yeah.
card, and then people also might have weaker CPUs as well. Basically, if you're not on a card like a 4000 series card that has like frame generation that can support frame gen, you're not running this at a consistent 60 or over 60 on PC. If you're not like just at the top of the line, pretty much you're gonna have problems running this game even at like a stable 60 FPS.
That
Um,
sounds pretty concerning.
yeah, and this is just for people who like are able to like play this game and boot this game. There's a lot of people that are like can't even play this game. Like it just crashes them on them on startup. They try to get to after they choose like the language, it just crashes on them. Like they can't even get to the main menu of this game for a good chunk of people. And I was taking a jab at our intros earlier because Capcom released some troubleshooting and known issues for Monster Hunter Wilds on their Steam page, and then one of the troubleshooting things, obviously they had like the basic thing like check the game system requirements, update your video graphics drivers if you need to, update DirectX or whatnot, verify the game's cache in Steam. But one of them was like, if you're experiencing crashes caused by insufficient VRAM while performing shader warming, please contact Intel Corporation or the PC vendor.
Okay, wait a second. That's actually completely legitimate because of like the issues that recent Intel CPUs have had.
I know, but it's really funny that the way they phrased that is like, because obviously some of the recent Intel CPUs are they're experiencing their own fucking hell. But it's just like the way they say that is like, please contact Intel Corporation or the PC vendor. It's like, all right, what if you fucking built your PC and it's like it's not, and you don't have like an Intel thing, or it's like just doing that on AMD. It's just one of those things. Like it just feels kind of.
Yeah, I get it, but also like we had actual game devs coming out like during like when the Intel stuff was coming out saying, yeah, if we got this issue, like 95% of the time it was these Intel CPUs, if not more than that. So I get what you're saying, and there's definitely problems with this game's optimization. I don't think that specific comment by Capcom is made in bad faith.
I mean, obviously, right? It's not like it's there.
It's hilarious. I mean,
when you first mentioned, when you said that in the opening, your introduction, I just I guess highlight where my mind is. I know Intel just released their quarterly earnings, and they were, considering their last quarterly earnings were like disastrous. Their quarterly earnings this time were sort of like, okay, we've kind of leveled the ship that we're like still afloat, but we're not. They cut a bunch of jobs, they cut a bunch of benefits and other things. They're not in a good spot right now, but they're like, okay, they're basically on the mend. So I thought it was related to that. I was a little confused. I have a friend who works at Intel, and he says he's like, just from his perspective, he was not laid off. He's fine, but he was worried about this earnings release. And after they came out, it was, in his mind, like better than expected, like where they were. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, obviously not great still, but
yeah, it's still not great, especially in the sense that like for server stuff, AMD is still better, and like the most recent like consumer chips are they're worse for gaming than the previous ones, but at least maybe they don't have instability issues. Probably too soon to say for sure.
But yeah, so like I at first I thought like my system would be all right, like because like the intro of this game, after everything obviously will run fine during character creation and your Palico stuff, and then the opening cutscenes, it's like okay, everything seems smooth, and then like once the very beginning of the game where you first take control of your characters, like when it's on their secret, and there's like a bunch of these sandworms chasing after you, like at the first like 10 seconds of getting control of my character, it went down to like fucking 20 to 25 FPS. And then I was able to like bump it up a little bit higher. After that, I was like, oh god, it's so fucking over, right? In those first 10 seconds.
Well, I have to ask then, how did it run on PlayStation? And I don't know if we can just say this, like if we know anyone that's played it on Xbox.
From people who play performance on PlayStation, they're like, it's like 35 to 40 FPS on PlayStation 5. So
yeah, it's like I remember setting. Like when I played the PS5 version at TGS, I even mentioned that. It's like, yeah, this performance is nowhere near stable. This is kind of like atrocious. Which, to be fair, if you played Monster Hunter World on a base PS4, probably wasn't that far off from how Wilds is playing on a PS5.
Either, so. You'll get used to it.
But for some certain sections, like the closed off like tutorial section against like the first monster, like it was running like my system was running stable there, like pretty high, 60 FPS, 60 plus FPS. But then once you're out of the open world after that initial section, it's more around 40 to 50 FPS for me. So like I'm still willing to live with it. And hopefully there's further optimizations to be made. It's still running better than consoles on my system, but it's still like it's just one of those things. Like man, okay, fine.
Yeah, I expected it after Dragon's Dogma 2, and basically I was like, depending on how well this beta runs, I will either upgrade to that new Zen 5 3D CPU, the 9800X 3D, or I won't. Thankfully, on my system at least, it seems to be running well enough where I don't need to upgrade. I might still will. I might still will just because those CPUs are really good for MMOs. But I don't feel like I need to.
What's the state of Dragon's Dogma 2 now? Did they change the game, or did they just tell you
They
just buy a new
did-
CPU?
They did
Apparently
optimize it a bit,
they
but
did
I don't know. how that
apparently
turned out.
optimize it. I haven't checked it since then. It's possible because from what I'm seeing, Wilds is running better in the CPU limited situations than Dragon's Dogma 2 did at launch, but I'm not sure if it's running the same or around the same level as Dragon's Dogma 2 is now, because I'm not reinstalling that. I have no reason to go back to that right now. So
And yeah, you also have people, a lot of people, who run into VRAM issues in this game. So it turns for some reason the models in this game turns almost PS1 polygon.
And to be
status,
fair about
if they run out of VRAM.
to be fair, I saw a couple
rough.
of people on Reddit where it's I have a laptop with a 3050 Ti. It should be good enough to run this game.
Oh, no.
Why is everything cubes? And it's you should read the system requirements, because the minimum requirements is 6 gigabytes of video RAM, which is actually pretty reasonable.
16,
all things
yeah.
six
Was it 16?
six
okay.
gigs of VRAM.
Okay.
But if but a 3050 Ti laptop GPU only has 4 gigabytes, so at least half of the videos you're seeing of monsters turning into cubes is because somebody with 4 gigabytes of VRAM has been trying to play the game, and that's usually what's causing that issue.
Yeah, but they are amusing, for sure.
Yeah.
To see them. And I'm still having fun with it. I still think it's pretty fascinating. But then they have this open-ended structure, right? The big thing in this game is most of it is going to be very you're out in the field. You have this bit there's this. It's not really the main camp that you're in this demo. It's not really a full town like in Rise and World and other previous Monster Hunters.
You can head to the full town, but there's no NPCs in it, so it's kind of like a ghost town. It still has some pretty atrocious performance, because you do see wandering around NPCs, but you don't have any of the shops or anything. So.
Yeah, so they're still in beta, of course. So a lot of this will change in the full game when it's more filled out, obviously. But it's all very seamless, right? So you head out of that camp into the big open zone, and there's no loading screen. There's no flying creature to kind of fly off into that zone. Everything's all seamless and so forth. And they have this kind of weird thing when you're going into the game, you have to pick a lobby, but the lobby that you're in is sort of meaningless. It's just to get into a room, and it'll be populated by random people that you don't have to associate with, but it's just to get into a room. And then if you're then this is the really the crazier part is in order to accommodate this new structure, Capcom decided to reinvent the wheel on how you want to play with friends, and it's all through link stuff. So you're whenever you want to party up with your members, it doesn't matter what lobby you're in. So whenever everyone goes into the game and then chooses a lobby, you can all be in different lobbies. That's totally fine. That just means you're in the game, you're in a room, and then you have to establish a party link. So you invite everyone to a party link to be in the same party link, but that doesn't mean that you're going to show up in each other's games yet. That just means that okay, you're all linked together and you're prepped up to be linked to see each other, but it's not going to happen yet. What you want to do is one of two ways. One, you can go to the quest handler and post up a quest, and then people can now join your environmental link. So when you're on the same environmental link, that's basically being in the same MMO instance to see each other. Or if there's a creature that you want to fight, but it doesn't have a posted quest for it that you can choose from, say Raid Dow, for example, there's no official quest you can put up beforehand. You have to by yourself go out there and hit the Raid Dow a few times, by yourself, and then once you hit it enough times and do enough damage, then it will do the begin quest pop up, and then mid fight the rest of the people in your party link accepts that instant invite to go into your environmental link and then start heading out towards you where you're fighting the Raid Dao. So it's like
Wait. Let me make sure I'm understanding this right. 'Cause
Yes,
I feel
yes.
like I can't. There's no way I can be. So the quest doesn't start until somebody like starts attacking the monster and actually already engages it.
yes.
That's
Yeah,
yes
yeah,
and
yeah,
no.
yeah,
Yes and no. So basically, if you're going to a monster out, the timer doesn't start until you attack the monster. But if you choose an investigation or whatnot from the quest keeper, that's you have like the monster's not going to just go away. It just doesn't start the timer until you get to it. I'm pretty sure if you're already in a party link, they can just join you to head towards the monster. And I guess if they're in the environmental link, it doesn't matter anyways because they can just waltz up right to it.
because
But
when you're in the party link, when you're in the party, that doesn't mean you're on the same lobby. So when you're in the party link, no, like all four of those party links, if they're in different lobbies, doesn't mean that like the monster is all up for that because you're all in different lobbies. So you all have different environmental instances already. So just being in a party link doesn't mean that the monster will show up for everyone because of the world state. So the only way to really see the same thing is to be in that same environmental link. And the only way to be in the same environmental link is to either go out and hit that monster a few times if you don't have a quest posted for it. Or if there is, like I assume the full game will be more robust, hopefully, in that regard of just like being able to like accept the quest and everyone is with you beforehand before you go out to the monster. Because at the moment, if you just want to hunt a Raid Dao together, you cannot like start that manually before engaging the Raid Dao beforehand. Like
that's
you would
not
have
true.
to.
That's not true. So basically, one thing I did notice from beta is that you know how you randomly get investigations sometimes from like breaking monster parts in world. That's a thing here too. You can get a Raid Dao investigation that way, which means that you can have a pre-made quest that you can start at the quest keeper. But that means that you have to have but in the beta at least you can't get a Raid Dao quest like that's not an investigation. So in order to get that investigation, you basically need to have hunted one first.
See, so there's the
chance.
thing. Okay, so that's the thing. You can so now you're saying that like if people just want to like hunt together a monster for the first time, I guess one or more people or at least one person needs to have hunted that monster beforehand to
and
even
had
establish
to
that.
To be clear though, this is specifically because the number of quests is very limited for like by default in the beta. This is definitely like this specific issue is not going to be a problem in the full game because
I hope so, because right
there's
now
going
it
to be
fucking
regular
sucks.
yeah there's going to be regular Raid Dao like hunts in the base game. That's no question about it. It's just it's a clunky system at the
the way it's
best of
structured right
time.
now is god fucking ass, dude. Like I'm not saying that's like it's not gonna be it's gonna be insurmountable to learn, but the way they have structured this is like way more convoluted and intuitive than it needed to be. It was way more straightforward than any other prior Monster Hunters than this before this game.
Yeah,
It fucking sucks, dude.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just I'm trying to be devil's advocate here and say that Monster Hunter like demos and betas have always had like a very rigid structure, and because of it, it's showing the worst case scenario for the system. And I think in the full game, it's not going to be nearly as bad because you're going to have more granularity over whether or not you want to play in a private session or a public session, which you can't do now. So if it's a private session, then I assume that other people can join your private session, which means that they'll be in the same environmental link from the start.
I really hope that they do that. Like I really hope that is a thing in the full game.
Private rooms have been in literally every Monster Hunter.
Yes, yeah. That's for prior Monster Hunters. Right now, they have not made the case. I'm trying to remember if like previous Monster Hunter betas, like Rise and World or Sun or whatever, allowed you to make private rooms in those demos. I don't remember.
They didn't because well. If
I
I remember,
remember.
if I remember correctly, this is the first time that a Monster Hunter demo has even had access to like a hub. Because I guess they're trying to showcase the fact that you can walk right out from the hub into the open world and hunt, and that's why they're having the demo showcase that. If I remember correctly, the Monster Hunter World demo, it was like just a menu, and you had to share like a code. And so if we're going back based off of that, then that was even more convoluted. And if past this prologue, then it's probably not going to be as bad as it is now at the full release because Monster Hunter World was the same shit.
So you're saying if that prior was it World you said had the
World.
codes, that means that you could share that code with other people and have that private session just for you and those other people, and that's it. Just a private room.
Yes.
Okay, so that's something that they already offered, and that's not in this current beta. Now I'm not saying that the full release of Wilds will not offer that. Like common sense would dictate that they should offer that. But obviously we haven't seen the full game and the final state of it, so we don't officially know if that's going to be the case.
Like
but
literally, all I'm saying is,
if they don't offer that, if they don't offer that, and then it's currently how it is right now, it's going to be I fucking hate it.
Yeah, no. To be clear, it is frustrating right now. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that we know enough about the game's structure and how other games have worked in the series that it's like, I'm going to just say it right now. There's no way in hell it doesn't have private lobbies come launch. And if it doesn't, then basically, if it doesn't somehow, then that's going to be like 2 whole points like taken away from the review because that's unacceptable. Like genuinely.
So hopefully there's just the worst it's gonna be, and hopefully by the full game it'll be something that'll be second nature, and it's like it's like I said, the system works and I'm able to play with friends and just like once we're all in it together and have a good time, that's fine. But it's just setting it up and having to go through like the hoops and learning this. It's so annoying because it's like everything was so much easier. Like previous games already fucking solved this, and then they said let's reinvent the wheel once again. I'm like, so other than that, and the optimization issues, it is still like, it's okay. There are certain things that I miss about it, like cooking, for example, like the cooking mini game. There's no cooking mini game in this game where you take out like you take out your portable roast, and then like when it darkens like to a certain color, you take it out. There's nothing like that. You just kind of cook on the go and have like that photorealistic food, or maybe just real food like in Dragon's Dogma 2. So that's all straightforward. You can cook either from your portable roast or like in your camp tent. And you can.
Well, you can still get well done steaks. So I don't know how you get them if you just like if it's like a shop thing, because I know that's been a thing you could do in previous games, or because the beta is so limited, we can't say for sure what is or isn't going to be.
I mean, I'm going by what I said about it in the beta, right? Like I chose the portable pot roast, and I decided, okay, I want to cook this meat, and I didn't get the mini game, so I'm commenting that I didn't have the mini game. I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want me to tell you because I don't have access to the full game. I'm not saying this is going to be represented the full game, but from what I played in the demo, it doesn't have the cooking mini game. So I don't know what you want me to tell you. Do you want me to lie to you that it doesn't have
I'm not saying you're lying, Josh. I'm just saying.
Okay, I'm just saying what I'm saying. What the fuck you want me to tell you? So that's that. So one of the things that I liked about Monster is like those little small touches like that. Not in Wilds, not in this Wilds beta. But it's just kind of it's kind of like the open world zone. It's pretty big, and it's also kind of weird. Like they made a problem and made a solution all in one go. We're like, okay, the monster's running off. You can just turn on auto run and have it sprint, and then go things along the way. You don't have to you don't have to manually follow scout flies if you don't want to. You can just turn on like basically turn like your Sacred into like an a auto driving vehicle, pretty much. And it'll determine like the best path to the monster. So there's like no really sort of like manual control anymore if you don't want to for chasing after the monster, which is sort of weird. Because it's just like, I don't know, it feels like a thoughtless process to just navigate to the monster. Yeah, and it feels more automated also because of the size of the zones and how far the monsters can run off to. It's like more preferable to just keep that auto run on because the journey to them manually would be kind of a pain. So they that's kind of circling back on they kind of made a problem and solution in one go. Like the size of these like this verse zone already fucking bigger than like the opening zone like the big forest zone in world. And so
For what
like
it's worth,
that,
I still think that the ancient forest and world is like a really good zone.
yeah,
I agree.
it's
Yeah.
cool. And I think it had like the size of it was still like of course navigating through it like verticality wise can get you tripped up for sure, but like it's still like you still had reasonable times to get to the monster just like fighting it on your own, manually controlling your
Mhm.
hunter towards them. While in this one it's just like, oh, the monster's running off. It's more like in that Rise cadence, like get on your mount, but instead of like in Rise of you manually controlling that pet to go towards them, you just like turn on auto run and then do whatever. Do I need to heal up? Do I need to sharpen? I'll do all that while my secret is just auto running towards it because of the size of the fucking zone and where this fucking monsters run off to the like a few miles out. I have decent amount of time to kind of just do whatever, and then
Or you could just
before.
teleport, because even in the
Yeah,
beta there was a few
know.
preset.
Yeah, I know you can teleport, set up camps, and go to that monster, but it's just like, But I have that kind of traditionalist monster hunter mind still. I'm not like thinking, oh,
Yeah.
go to the next camp. I'm used to chasing a monster, because that's how I've traditionally played these games. So it's a lot of taking a lot of getting used to of like a lot of this game just feels very automated compared to even past Monster Hunters that are already they kind of already streamlined a lot of this stuff. This one kind of just takes the logical next step, like streamlining more of your stuff to the point that like it's just automating control for you, automating navigation for you. Like it's like why even don't think about like engaging with like the rest of the game. Just focusing on like fighting the monster. Everything else will automate for you. It's like okay, that's like this even has like an option to like use optimized healing potion, right? You don't even have to think about like what potion to think about anymore. You just put that like, oh, just use the most optimized healing method. And then the game will calculate, okay, if you're in this HP threshold, we'll use a mega potion. If you're in this HP threshold, we'll use a potion. Automatically for you. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about um overhealing. Just we'll do the thinking for you. I was just kind of like, okay, I guess, sure. I mean, there's little to no reason to not use that, because it's like just it's a it's just an option available to you. It's like, okay, why even think about like what potions I'm using anymore if I have this feature, which is I get it to some extent, but at the same time, it's like the games are just basically like will do everything for you. Don't worry. You just focus on hitting the monster and hitting them with your weapon. That's it. Okay. So that's the impression I got from this beta of like optimization issues, not great. The playing with your friends more unintuitive than it needs to be at the moment. Hopefully things are hopefully both of these issues are ironed out better in the full release. And then this like kind of design philosophy change, not to really change, but more of like a it's
Yeah,
going to,
because like
it's going to the logical next step of like from World and Rise that already
yeah,
streamlined this formula. They're just going the next logical step of like having the game make the decisions for you.
yeah, I'd say that like the way that Iceborne, because this is very clearly like even down to the wound system basically being an extension or like a rework of the tenderized system that was in Iceborne. Uh, the way that sacrets work is basically a combination of palamutes and the like the rides that you could do
Yeah.
in Iceborne. Because in Iceborne, you had literally the same thing where it's like, okay, I have enough details on this monster. So this little fellow I'm riding on is going to go right towards him so I can prepare, which was the exact same thing that you were talking about with Wilds. Just in this one, you can directly control it like a palamute, so you don't have to like direct. You can just ride it and have full control if you want to. Whereas in Iceborne, if you wanted to use the ride at all, it was doing it automatically no matter what. And nobody really complained then, but I understand what you're saying. I agree
What
to
do
an
you mean?
extent.
Like I'm saying that like you have the option to auto run and it'll auto navigate to the monster for you. You don't have to press a button at all. You don't have to press move at all. It'll move for you.
And
I don't remember the Palamute being able to auto navigate.
No, not the Palamute, not the Palamute. I'm saying the one in Iceborne. The Palamute couldn't, but the Hunter rides in Iceborne literally did the same thing. Where it's like it was even to the point where it's like if you didn't have enough research on the monster to be able to know exactly where it was, the thing you're riding would go to traces to get like more details, and then once it had enough, it would go right towards it. It would do that all automatically.
Okay, but that's at least that's at the very least at Iceborne, there is still some form of investigation of like trying to iron out where the monster is, trying to suss out where the monster is. Yes, while automated, there is still that element of like trying to figure out where that monster is. While this one, just like just go fucking towards it. Who cares about investigating where the monster's tracks are or where it is at all? There's no investigation part of like trying to iron out where the monster has been. Your fucking thing will know exactly the optimal route. It knows exactly where it is on the map, anywhere on the map, and it knows the exact optimal route to get there. Hit that auto run and have a good time, doing whatever on that fucking map on your journey there. If you're not fast traveling to a pop up camp that you may have nearby, and even then, you go to that pop up camp, you get on your secret, you auto run there, and then then you save to yourself a little bit more time. You're still auto running towards. I had fun playing the open beta. Like, when I got to play the game and, I had fun using the hammer and the insect glaive. The insect glaive is a pretty interesting weapon in this, where it's definitely more grounded, less aerial focused. It's definitely interesting how you get buffs fast in this game because it interacts a lot more with that new focus mode of opening wounds in this game. So you want to use your focus attack on wounds. When you break wounds with the insect glaive, your bug can go right through the monster to get wounds on the other side of it and get your 3 extract buffs immediately from breaking wounds. So and then and having all your buffs is insect glaive in this game feels really good because you kind of get more expanded moveset options.
The wound system is absolutely trippy. Like with longsword, it's broken because it's okay, if you target a wound with your R1 attack with the longsword, it's not only will it break every wound on the monster and do a bunch of damage, you instantly have red gauge. It's huh?
Yeah.
What weapon should I use on this? Because World I was longsword baby, and Rise I was switch axe.
I would say maybe try. It's tough because both of those are very longsword especially, but both of those are fairly mobile weapons. So it's if you haven't had experience using something like a great sword or a hammer or a hunting horn or whatnot, it might be a bit of a. Well, actually, that's one of the really good things about this game. You can have multiple weapons. You can only switch them when you're on your secret, but if you want to, for example, have a hunting horn to set buffs, and then switch to a great sword or a gun lance or a regular lance or whatever you want, you can do that. And that's a neat feature. And I'm actually kind of pretty happy about that. But yeah, I would say definitely try a different weapon.
I think I will try a slower weapon, a hammer.
Yeah. I would say do not try longsword right at the start, because if you do, you're never going to want to try anything else. At least in the beta, it's absolutely busted. They need to nerf it.
Yeah, and just the balance of this open beta, they usually change it up for the full release. That's historically how it's been. Just because some weapons might be overtuned or weaker in this beta, in the full game, they usually kind of run a balance pass on it.
Yeah. Longsword should not be able to immediately break all of a monster's wounds and then get red gauge from just targeting one wound with an R1 attack. That is actually busted.
Yeah.
So, and how long does the beta go for?
November 4th, I think.
All right, so basically, if I'm gonna get on it, I gotta get on it because we're recording this on the 2nd. I don't know if I will, but I might.
That's up to you. Well, it's nice to know beforehand. At least, the best thing they did was releasing this months out. To the point that now Capcom, the development team, knows what the issues are. They have hopefully there's a sufficient amount of time to iron out a good chunk of these issues. Whatever they can on their end. Obviously, they cannot save the people that are on very underpowered setups.
Yeah.
but hopefully, whatever they can on their end, hopefully this gives them enough time before launch on like late February.
Yeah, hopefully the shortcomings with the beta are addressed before launch, or at least are in the mindset of the developers. Because
Yeah.
as they continue to update the game, it's effectively a service game. At least the last two rounds, especially if this is especially going to be framed more after World than after Rise. I anticipate they'll be supporting this game for a long time once it releases next February. And before we get to the news, we kind of earmarked a small section of this podcast to follow up on a topic that we broached last week. Because Josh, you were able to finish what you had started. You were able to complete your mission
Oh
of
boy.
seeing through to the end. Yakuza series on Prime.
Like a Dragon, Yakuza.
Or yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I watched the first 3 episodes, and then they dropped the last 3 episodes like a day or so ago. So some friends and I got up together again, and they're like, "Okay, we really hate ourselves," and decided to watch the rest of this series. And it never gets better. It never gets better. I don't know if I mentioned it or not last week, but like one of the big things that makes this show hard to follow is like it constantly switches between the 1995 and 2005 because they have this
You did
whole
mention that, yeah.
these storylines, and I don't know if I mentioned that like it probably would have been better if like they bundled together a lot of the 1995 scenes and bundled together a lot of the 2005 scenes and run those as their own separate runs instead of like trying to intersperse them into each other in a way that's like hard to follow. Um, and you know that doesn't really get resolved at all in the last 3 episodes. But like it kind of rears its head more throughout them. So I will get into spoilers for how this series goes and wraps up because I feel like I have to inform Brian how this fucking thing is. So the main thing about these 3 episodes, they're still the focal plot point of like Kiryu and Yumi have to go find the missing 10 billion yen of the Omi. That's sort of where they leave off. Kiryu and Yumi meet up with the head of the Omi, and the head of the Omi basically says, "You have until midnight tomorrow to go find it, or else both of you are dead." Yeah, so that's their firm deadline. For this the 2005 current state. The 1995 scenes in um in the last 3 episodes basically just go full circle of like why did these the four being Kiryu, Yumi, Nishiki, and this new character for the TV series Miho, like why are they all so cold to each other now? And the 1995 arc basically details how Miho, who is Nishiki's sister in this TV series, passes away. She basically gets kidney failure, and Nishiki is obviously trying to save his sister and trying to find a proper donor for her. But he gets played by the Dojima clan, pretty much. Before he gets played, Kiryu says, "I really want a lot of money so they can raise the funds for Miho's, not only for Miho's surgery, but like to get her up in the donor list." So obviously, they have to bribe internally through the Dojima clan has connections to bribe their contacts to bump Miho up to the donor list to get her, her kidney transplant and so forth. Because she's on dialysis now. And she's not, and but not looking well by the day. So in order to get the raise the funds for that, Kiryu goes into this underground fighting arena again, and he's basically after every match he's getting paid a lot to win every match, and there's kind of for every time he wins a fight in that underground arena, more of his dragon tattoo will start getting drawn in and filled out. So there's the backstory in the TV series of how he starts getting the dragon tattoo on his back. Every time he wins, more and more of it is gonna get drawn in.
That's not how tattoos work.
It is now.
Yep, it is now. So at the very last match, Kiryu is facing off against this, dude named Emperor. But for Dojima, he says we can get a lot more money out of this if we fix the match. So he has to convince. So they're telling Nishiki, if you want Miho to go to go through with the operation and get bumped up and get the proper donor and everything, you have to make sure Kiryu loses this match against the Emperor. So they slip him, some drugs that mix this in with Kiryu's drink, and to fuck him up, pretty much. And so Kiryu goes fights against the Emperor, and Nishiki, before the first break, in this match, he mixes in the drugs, but Yumi catches him doing it. So Yumi's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So Kiryu does not drink this concoction that Nishiki made, because Yumi was like, "Don't fucking drink this. Like, what are you doing?" So Nishiki basically spills, is like, "You have to lose this match for Miho's sake," and whatnot. So it's really stupid how this is done. So Kiryu willingly starts getting beat up more and more by Emperor in this round. But I guess in a daze or whatever, or survival instinct or whatnot, he gets after getting beating the shit out of him, a fucking 80 fucking blows to him, he gets the winning uppercut and knocks him out. Just by sheer instinct, this Emperor guy. So everything goes fucked. Obviously, Dojima isn't happy. And the whole deal with Nishiki is off to save Miho, pretty much. But then this is when Nishiki finds out he got played by the Dojima clan, because they never had a donor in the first place, and his kidney was always compatible with Yumi's, or not Yumi's, Miho's. So he could have, used his kidney to go save Miho's life. So. But no one told them that, because everyone was planted by the Dojima clan, pretty much, on this whole scheme. So Miho's death, it pretty much sets off a whole sequence of events of Nishiki kind of going down this darker path, filled with rage, and Nishiki goes to kill Dojima then, but in the games, similar to the games, Kiryu stops him. But Nishiki already killed Dojima with a gun. So they're in the same room as this dead Dojima with the gun. And so Kiryu's like, "I'll take the fall for it." So when everyone catches them, it's Kiryu the one holding the gun over Dojima, even though Nishiki killed him. So that's why Kiryu's in jail for 10 years, from 1995 to 2005. And Dojima's dead, and then Nishiki rises through the ranks of the Tojo via the Dojima clan from then on. So go to 2005 now. So now we have this whole thing with the 10 billion yen missing in Naomi. And there's this thing of the Demon of Shinjuku. And this all culminates in Kiryu and Yumi finding Aiko right before Aiko decides to kill herself, because Aiko thinks that Haruka is dead, because Haruka was caught up in this incident, but Kiryu saved her, and Aiko just thought her daughter was dead. So they're able to save Aiko from offing herself, and by finding Aiko, they also found the van where all the 10 billion yen was, all the missing money. So they go make their way back to Kamurocho, to the Millennium Tower, trying to find Nishiki and so forth, because they had this whole agreement with Nishiki that we would show that the Omi, that we have the missing money and so forth. And I guess that they corroborated with Nishiki before this on that. Anyway, none of this is really important. The important thing is this whole mysterious Demon of Shinjuku thing that's been doing serial murders for the last decade or so. That was Nishiki all along. So it kind of does this Judgment 1 ass pull, but Nishiki is this Demon of Shinjuku. So Kiryu confronts Nishiki, the Omi and the Tojo are about to do this all-out clan war because Omi still didn't get their money, so they're like kind of infiltrating Kamurocho now. I'm about to start this all-out war. Kazuma is still alive. Kazuma, like the caretaker of Kiryu and Nishiki in the games. He's still alive here, and he was trying to smooth over relations with the Toji and the Tojo and Omi. Tried to prevent an all-out war and tried to tell the head of the Tojo cut off Nishiki and the Dojima clan, so there's no all-out war against them. So the head of the Tojo already agreed to cut off Nishiki and the Dojima clan to prevent an all-out war, but Omi still wants their money and still they're still pissed that they still haven't gotten it. So those negotiations, while the Tojo did their part, the Omi are still pissed. So as they're about to do their all-out war, this when Majima shows up again because they needed additional reinforcements. So this when we see Majima again after like 3 episodes or so. This dude is barely in this show. They have their all they fight for a bit of the streets. Kiryu and Nishiki have their final battle. Aiko dies because they got hijacked the parking lot with the 10 billion yen by these masked dudes working with Nishiki. So one of them has a gun about to shoot Yumi. Aiko covers Yumi with her body, so she basically dies. So Aiko is no longer a character in the show. It's still Yumi and Haruka still there. They get out of the parking lot and are able to deliver the 10 billion yen back to the Omi, showing, okay, everyone's stop. We have your money. Take your money and fucking get out of here. And then Kiryu is victorious against Nishiki, but Nishiki basically kind of realizes he can't win against Kiryu, but also doesn't want to continue living, so kind of stabs himself at the very end against Kiryu. Kiryu's like, don't fucking die on me, and basically carries him out of there. As proof to Detective Date, he fulfilled his part in their sort of deal when he got out of prison, showing I got the Demon of Shinjuku, it was Nishiki, and basically the medical services ship him off. And there's at the very, very end, the finale of this TV series is that.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Spoiler warning for the Yakuza the TV series.
Oh yeah, as if I already didn't spoil enough. At the very end, so Yumi is carrying Kiryu, injured Kiryu on her shoulder, and they meet up with Kazuma again. Kazuma, during the fight on the streets between the Omi and the Tojo, gets slashed in the back. So Kiryu, he puts his hand around his back, and showing that it's nice to see Kazuma again. He notices blood on it, and he's like, "Oh man, you got fucked up pretty bad." He looks at the back of Kazuma's back. He has the dragon tattoo. So Kazuma was actually the original dragon that Kiryu looked up to from the beginning of the show that inspired him to become the dragon of Dojima. So
Shintaro Kazuma.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and that's that.
And we're heavy in the spoiler too, but Nishiki is alive at the end,
we don't know if he's alive, at the
because
very.
That's
yeah,
I can understand approaching Nishiki holding the gun, Kiryu taking the fall. How you got to that scene was slightly different, but I'm trying to be open minded. They didn't have to follow the plot beats like a Bible, but that was the crux of Yakuza 1 at the top of the tower.
Yeah, he does this noble sacrifice, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a half sacrifice, half suicide. Yeah, spoiler for Yakuza Kiwami. If you're playing it on Switch, please skip this section. It's kind of I don't know how you change that. That's kind of one of those foundational stakes that you put in the ground and says this can't change. I'm trying to be open minded, but I'm oh, what do you do with the character past that point?
I think it's like The Walking Dead. They follow the comics, but it kind of diverge at a certain point. Certain character died a little earlier, but they're kind of kept a little bit alive longer in the show because they were popular or some shit.
And remind me, it's been a few years. Jog my memory. It's
Judgment had this mysterious serial murderer, and it was like, and it was the other lawyer dude, I think.
right, but no, in
Judgment.
Kiwami/1, it's it's been so long. Nishiki fires a gun at an explosive at the top of the tower.
Yeah,
So
that caused the
the
10 million
money's
yen to go
the money's
flat in the
gone.
tower.
He's gone. The money reigns over the city, which some of the other
Yeah.
games follow up on. Like I
Mhm.
guess doesn't Akiyama take some of that?
Akiyama
And
takes
that's
up
it.
That's how Akiyama gets his fortune and starts running
But
his
in this,
business.
but in this show, they just hand it to the
The
Omi.
Omi, yeah, they just handed it to the Omi.
Okay, they
Yeah.
just have it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like I'm open minded, but like, what does that accomplish? Because it just seems like in the original story, it was kind of like this holy, not holy thing, but like this target thing that no one could have. And at the end, everyone got a little bit of it because of what Nishiki does, the decision he makes at the very end. Like, I'm not saying it's the best writing in the world. Yakuza is full of contrivances, but it's just like compared to the nothing of we got the Omi their money. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then the last second revelation that Shintaro Kazama was the dragon all
Yeah.
along. It was like, and then kind of, and then that's where it cuts out. That's it. That's the end of the series. Like, oh man, it was not good. Oh, like I kind of just like kind of speed run past like the main plot beats. There's like other things, but it's like a lot of it is just
It just
not good.
it reminds me of what I said. I don't know if it was last week or the week before. I think it was last week, where it's
Yeah.
like it's trying to have its cake and eat its too. But the problem is that means it just doesn't work. If you wanted to do something fully original, maybe you could have made something work. But the fact that they're trying to both be their own thing while also trying to be a weird retelling of Yakuza 1, sorta, not really, it just sounds like
Like they
it's a mess.
it feels like it could have been like, here is a story set in the late 2000s of an established Kiryu, a story around that time while he was, anywhere set between the games or separate from the games. Like, doesn't really matter, independent of the games.
Yeah.
But now they kind of got this weird
Take
like
the
other
judgment
thing.
approach and have it be a different character, and it's
There
like
you go.
you can tell your own story, and it's like just consult so it like stays within canon if you somehow wanted to tie it in. I don't know.
It's also funny that like anytime they want to have anything happen in Kamurocho, like 90% of the time the scene will be at Theater Square in Kamurocho and nowhere else. You don't really see Champions District.
That's the only set they built.
Yeah, I know. That's probably it. So I mean, it's just like kind of like, okay, you want to show Kamurocho, but you only really see one small part of Kamurocho, and that's it. Oh man, I just hope I hope there's never a season 2 ever again, so I don't feel compelled to like watch
But
it.
but Josh,
you're not on deck.
Josh, if they have a season 2, there's a non-zero chance you'll see a poorly CG tiger.
I know. Just Vava.
I want to see the Omi Castle or whatever you call that
Oh
explained.
god. Yeah,
I want to see Kiryu on like a Gatling gun or an arbalest or whatever the hell it was.
Man, we
Uh,
sure are
no,
lucky
thank you.
that this Gatling gun shoots rubber bullets.
yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Alright, well, thank you for taking the fall for us.
I
The fall,
cannot.
but
Yeah, I cannot recommend it. No way. Even for the newcomers, just play Yakuza 0 or Yakuza Kiwami. Just don't watch this show.
So we're already 2.5 hours into this podcast. We luckily have a very small slate of news, but we'll go through it quickly. There's definitely one thing here, though, that we want to make sure that we highlight because it finally happened. Nintendo and Monolith Soft have announced Xenoblade Chronicles Cross Definitive Edition launching next March on the 20th for Nintendo Switch.
The first thing I'm
So
going to
it
say
finally
is I
happened.
loved how this was an announcement, just like the old school, just 7 a.m.
On a Tuesday
press
morning
release
or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just
People are
randomly.
saying, "Oh, it was a tweet." And it's like it was a tweet and a press release.
Yeah.
And a trailer on YouTube.
Yeah,
But
this is-
Yeah.
so Go ahead,
just a
Adam.
small like pet peeve of mine. I saw people say they announced it in a tweet. It's like, no, this is how announcements used to work. They would basically have a timed press release that goes out to media inboxes who then report on it, all at the same time, basically. And obviously now in social media era, that all gets put out to social media also. So it's just an announcement. It's really all it is. That just
No, you
happens
need a
to also
countdown
have a,
website, a countdown stream countdown, to
Yeah.
count down the other stream countdown.
This is an old-fashioned announcement, just an announcement that happened to line up at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whenever it was. So
Yeah,
Yeah, it was 7 a.m. Yeah.
So before we get into it, just want to detail this will have like enhanced visuals. So like you see like some character faces, like some enhancements there. There'll be apparently new story elements in it. That definitely was teased already at like
Yeah.
the end of the trailer.
We don't
and
know.
then-
We don't know exactly what the story elements is, though. Though based off the trailer, we can say that there's going to be some sort of epilogue because it's an extension of the kind of like stinger at the end of the credits for the original release.
Yeah, they're teasing that there'll be more, but we don't know what that and more means on that. But at long last, that fucking 20,000 years later,
It's free. It's free. And
Yeah.
and maybe now that like I think one of the main reasons why Cross wasn't as well people liked it when it came out, but it wasn't as well received across the board when it came out. And I think one of the reasons is that Cross is a very different sort of Xenoblade game. And I'm sorry for everyone listening to being like, why are they saying Cross? Isn't that next?
it's Cross.
It's Cross.
It's just your default character's name is Cross in this. If you don't choose
Yeah. And it's a Xeno game, like maybe not as much recently, but it's like, man, they love their religious iconography.
but it's also like in Japanese titles like Namco X Capcom, it's Namco Cross Capcom for that.
Yeah, and Monster Hunter Generations, when it came out in Japan, it was Monster Hunter Cross with the X symbol. So
Yeah.
it's just a Japanese thing. Simple as that.
But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see this in action, seeing what changes they've made to it. Obviously, people have compared like the new models for Elma and Lin between their how they looked on Wii U.
They
versus
look
now the
like
Switch.
a cross between the original character designs, but in a more like Xenoblade 3 style. Not quite like abandoning the original art style, but it's like a mix between the two, and I'm actually very happy with it.
Yeah,
it's
the
not-
original
it's
art
not-
style, it kind of had a hinge of creepy doll look to it. So
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
Xenoblade, the first Xenoblade, also suffered from that in the original release. But there's also like a different like sort of design from like what you saw from Elma in the Xenoblade 2 DLC was added there. So because she was like more the anime stylized aesthetic of Xenoblade 2. So it's interesting for them to kind of do another style that's like more in line with like Xenoblade Cross, but not so much like too anime.
It's definitely not
stylized
like
Xenoblade 2.
definitive edition.
Yeah.
That basically just modernize.
I don't know if it's just me like looking too deeply into things, but I have seen some comparison screenshots, and it seems like the game, it isn't like oversaturated, but it's like just a little bit more saturated than the original release was. Maybe
Yeah.
it's
Colors.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like you can kind of see it in the comparison shots, like between like New LA and the original and like the new, like the definitive edition. It's just like a little. It could just be placebo. It could just be placebo.
Yeah.
But
We'll have to see the full release because also this had a whole weather or time of day system.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's hopefully we'll see like some actual direct gameplay footage of this game before launch. We only got like the cinematic trailer and like the first look at it. They did say that the multiplayer will still be intact in it. So
Hell yeah.
So people who missed out on the multiplayer experience can get into that before the servers shut down. They also mentioned that the Japanese release of this game is based on the Western version of this game, so you won't have like a slider to adjust bus.
I will say that I have seen some people bring up that's like in retrospect that change was really weird because it's like it's just options for different body types. I have friends that really have different body types that would probably appreciate that. So
yeah. I mean, I agree. Like I think them, but it was like in that weird era of
it was like I think in retrospect, like at least one of the reasons why stuff has gotten so bad with the culture war stuff when it comes to like localization things is that 100% Nintendo in like 2014, 2015 went overboard and it just
Definitely
was
a
not
contributing
great.
factor.
Yeah, so when
Yeah.
people talk about censorship or whatever in Xenoblade Cross, the two things that always come to mind are like the body slider stuff for like bust or whatnot. And that one always felt weird to me because like I remember playing like The Sims 2 on PS2, which is a teen-rated game that you could do crazy stuff with your body, and it's just like no one cares. Like why? Anyways, so that one, whatever. But the other one with like people want to put Lynn in a swimsuit, I'm like, okay, I'm not even gonna touch this.
Xenoblade Cross had like super skimpy outfits.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna.
and I
She's
mean,
like 12 or 13. I'm not touching this.
Yeah, and I mean, like the original Xenoblade had the same thing, but literally everyone, like I think Shulk is technically an adult, if not like 17, 18, or 6.
Well, the original
16.
Xenoblade just had god awful armor design. Like it's like
Yeah,
some of
in
the
general,
ugliest
yeah.
aesthetics for armor design. Period.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a tangent. This is a little bit of a tangent, but you know what other Xeno game had a bunch of censorship?
3? Xenosaga 3?
Xenosaga 3.
Yeah, because I remember like there was a whole thing where it's like somebody like just rips their head off or something.
So I'm not like an anti-censorship crusader. I'm not like pro-censorship either, obviously. But like if Xenosaga ever gets a re-release, even I will be like, please uncensor that. Because Xenosaga 3 has multiple moments that is like legitimately confusing because it's censored so bad. Like there's a death scene that you don't realize.
To have, like blood running through her hands.
Shion is holding her hands in a cup. Like she's cupping her hands, and it's like confusing. Like, what is she doing? Why is she doing that? And what she's doing, she's holding blood in her hands, but they just removed it, and it's just like it makes no sense. Anyways, I care more about that than Xenoblade Cross, but still, whatever. It's not it's not ideal, but
yeah.
But I'm I mean, that's just really exciting to see, and hope. I wonder, like. Obviously we're still waiting to see signs of life of like whatever the successor to the Nintendo Switch is, and like if they're forward thinking with this as well.
Yeah, I really, really hope this gets a next gen patch. If we get confirmation, well, no, we will get confirmation about the Switch 2 before this releases, because they even said they're going to talk about it before the end of the fiscal year. So, like, unless they do it the week after this comes out, which knowing Nintendo, I guess that's not entirely impossible. We're probably going to hear about before then, and I hope we learn whether or not this will be like Switch 2, like if it'll have like a bonus patch for it. Because if there's any Xeno game that I feel like would benefit, especially from like a higher resolution, higher like further back level of detail, it's this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and I feel like I think you three have all played it, and I haven't. This has always been my big gap.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm really excited to I'll catch up to the rest of you.
I'm really interested to see like how they're gonna implement like the hexagonal node exploration system. Because the dual screens on the Wii U version were like was integral. It was really cool. Yeah, it was a really cool feature of that game.
Yeah, and I remember like years ago when they first like kind of talked about the possibility of this, they were like, it would take a lot of work. We would have to completely redo the user interface, and we haven't seen anything about the user interface because obviously it's going to be completely different. Which I'm curious about that. I'm very curious what the additional story stuff is going to be. Like, obviously, I don't know if it's going to be like the fact that at least part of it is an epilogue makes me curious. Is it just going to tie up the loose threads that the ending had, or is it going to maybe set up for a sequel? That's what I'm curious about.
The ending of Xenoblade Cross, that stinger, I still think is one of the most effective.
Yes.
Ever. It's really
there's
cool.
Something about this planet.
Yeah, there's something about this planet. That's a key. That's huge. And like you just say that, and anyone who's played the game knows what you're referring to. And like obviously it's sort of sequel bait, but like will it get an actual sequel, or will they just tie it up here, as James just asked? So, but I'm curious.
I really hope it does not tie into any other Xenoblade game.
Yeah, I've seen people say that they want it to tie into other Xenoblade games, but the thing is that if you've played Future Redeemed and you look at all the thematic like stuff that like Xenoblade 1, 2, 3 and like the DLCs are trying to say thematically at the core of its identity, Xenoblade and Xenoblade Cross are completely incompatible. Like the core nexus of the plot and the core nexus of what makes Xenoblade Cross is incompatible with what makes Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3.
You'd have to really take leaps and crosses about like how the logic works in both of these.
The only
games.
way, slight spoiler for Future Redeem's last ending. The only way it could possibly work is if Xenoblade Cross happens after Xenoblade Future Redeemed like remerges the worlds and basically remakes Earth. That's the only way it could work.
Yeah,
well, it felt like Future Redeemed did a lot of like teasing and hinting and kind of referential, and you never know, like, oh, is this like an actual tie-in or is it a wink and a nod? Because they did like yeah, and they did that, and they did the shining little speck falling to Earth, and you're like, what is that? I recognize that from somewhere, and or was that Future Redeemed, or was that Xenoblade 3 base game? It
That was
one of the
Future
credit
Redeemed.
sequences.
That was
Yeah,
Future Redeemed.
and
Okay.
both of those
Okay.
things are Xenosaga.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, I
They're-
actually saw a video from this like one like absolute Xeno freak going over all the references, and his thing was, yeah, these are references to Xenosaga. If there's anything that's going to tie it together, it would be maybe Monolith goes back to Xenosaga, and he was saying this does not fit up with Xenoblade Cross. That does not make sense. So yeah,
I don't know.
I hope he's right.
But who knows what they have planned for
Yep.
this. So just one question for me, just at a high level, someone who's not played Cross, you three who have, that character that is shown at the end of the definitive edition trailer, is that a person you
The
recognize?
hooded
or no?
person is completely new, as far as I can
Okay.
tell. Maybe the voice is somebody from the base
the
game,
Organization
but
13 member.
yeah, but it's like I am very curious about like what the scope of the additional content is going to be. Is it going to be an additional content? Because like every Xeno game has gotten a pretty massive chunk of new content. Like obviously there was Future Connected, which was like around 20 hours long, Torna, which was like 20 to 30 hours long, and obviously Future Redeemed, 20 to 30 hours long. So if passes prologue, I'd assume that whatever they add to Xenoblade Cross is going to be a similar amount of content, but we just don't know.
I saw memes that this new character was Malos.
Yeah, that was really good. I really hope they don't like make it more handholdy and like because like for me Xenoblade Cross like it has a weaker main narrative until like the very end. The side missions are very memorable.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of like really fucked up shit in side missions and ones that are like they're like permanently there's like permanent consequences to a good chunk of the side missions.
The one side mission that I always think of, and you can tell if somebody is a real crosshead if they bring it up, is the water treatment plant.
Oh yeah, it's fucked up.
Yeah, if somebody's saying that they've played a Xenoblade Cross and they haven't even said how they felt about it, and they mentioned the water treatment plant, you don't even need to know what they think about it because they've just told you it's one of their favorite RPGs of all time.
Yeah, that one's quite a side quest. I think
yeah, I will say one thing. Yeah, I will say one thing is I think that we are in a better spot where there's the potential for the game being better received is there. I think the main problem with Xenoblade Cross going into it is that most of Xenoblade 1 side quests fucking sucked. So even if you did have a Wii U and you had played Xenoblade 1, if you're playing Xenoblade Cross, most of the time you're thinking, well, Xenoblade 1's main story was good, but the side quests were poop, so I'm just going to try and do the main story, and that's...
don't play it like that game. Don't play it like that game. Yeah,
I can't blame anyone at the time for thinking that way, but because Xenoblade 3's side quests were good, I feel like now there's a chance for people to reevaluate it now that it's like you've had the whole trilogy, the whole Xenoblade story has basically been finished. Maybe there's going to be more to it, but it's a proper, good conclusion.
Because at the time, Xenoblade Cross was Xenoblade 2, effectively. Like, it was the follow-up, and so that was kind of the expectation, and then it was a very different game.
So I think there's a better chance that people, even maybe people that like kind of bounced off it when it first came out, I would say like give it another shot. Like like we said, you really have to. The thing with Xenoblade Cross is you have to be ready to immerse yourself in that world. And I still think it's one of the best designed open worlds of all time, with the way that it's like layered like a cake, where it's like you traverse most of it on foot, and people are like, "Oh, I want my mech," but it's like that's deliberate because they want you to get used to the world on foot, and then there's some areas you can only reach once you get the mech, and then or I guess the scale as it's called in this game. And then it's like once you get fight, there's even more areas you can get to, and it's like it feels like an interesting progression for like open world exploration. I really enjoyed it when I played it, and I hope people give it a proper chance.
I wonder if they'll get Sawano back on board for like new rearrangements.
Oh, I hope so. Oh, I
Crazy.
hope so.
The backing track, even in the trailer, I was like, hell yeah, this is great.
The OST for this game, it's not going to be like I'm not going to say it's the most consistent thing, but there's a lot of bangers on this.
Josh, I'm looking into the future. I'm seeing a possible outcome.
All right.
We reached the final boss of the epilogue section of Xenoblade Chronicles Cross. The track's name, The Key We Found.
All right, I'm kneeling. I kneel.
But yeah, let's circle our calendars for March 20th for Xenoblade Chronicles Cross Definitive Edition. And maybe we'll see before then. I don't know how much they're going to reveal about additional epilogue or content ahead of time, or if it's going to be a surprise going in.
God, this game's going to be massive. It's already probably the longest Xenoblade. If you do everything, it's going to get longer.
What was the file size of this game on the Wii U? I forgot. I'm thinking
it was like, I don't remember the exact file size. It was big, and then it also had the data packs that you had to download.
It's like a 10 gigabyte data disk or something.
No, there were several data packs for different elements. Oh, I think like overall, right. I think you could have like over like 23 gigabytes of like data packs installed, or even more than that.
For some reason, I thought there was like a data disk. Like, no, that's there's like things from the Wii U store, the Wii shop. Like, you have to get like data packs if you wanted like more seamless loading.
Fun fact: you can't get those anymore. Not that it matters. Everyone that had a Wii U has a Switch, and you're gonna be able to get Definitive Edition. So. Yeah.
I remember when we got review for this game, it was not a review code. We actually got a disc. A disc.
Yeah, I got
I mean, to me. That reminds me. Technically, I've gotten a review cart from Nintendo. Remember when I did Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition?
Oh, they sent you the cart.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I think that's the only time I've actually gotten like a review cart from Nintendo.
I didn't know review carts even existed.
I think I got Pokemon Sun.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But well, when we say review carts, are we talking about like a retail box? Because I've gotten review carts from like Nisa back in the day, which were actually like first. The
Xenoblade X one was like they mailed it to me. It wasn't even a box or like a. It was like a plastic. Yeah, like a plastic case with like there wasn't even like a disc art to it. It was just like the rounded edges.
Yes, I've had one
plastic case.
I got one of those for Disgaea 5. Back at the old site I used to write for. I got a review disc of Disgaea 5. So that's the one time I've gotten one of those, and then I have a review cart for Danganronpa Ultra Despair Girls.
Nice.
But yeah, it's those don't really happen anymore, which makes sense. But it's like it's like a bygone era. It's kind of
remember sad. Physical media.
Yeah. God, I just realized probably most of the people like most of our contemporaries in the games review space that haven't been around, because like there's been so much like turnover. Yeah. I bet like most people don't even know that those even existed in the first place now. That's sad.
Maybe. So it goes.
So just got to wrap up on all those games releasing in February and be done by March 20th.
Yep, easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that usually Koei Tecmo sends out like preview builds on PC for Atelier games, because this comes out like within a day of Atelier Yumiya, and it's like
that's true.
Yeah, fuck that. Especially with after how big Rise of 3 was, it's like it seems like every mainline JRPG is like minimum 60 hours these days. It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, I made a comment that like I think I made a comment in our Discord like January is a quiet month, and Josh was like, "Well, you've got Magnolia, Ender Magnolia, you've got
Freedom
Graces,
Wars.
we'll talk about that. And then we just got East Memoire is releasing
yeah.
in January. We just
Well, that's like
later
an
in our
8-hour game or something. So,
but yeah, it's still just like, and then March, now we have this. Like, it's packing pretty quick, as I guess what I'm getting at here. Speaking of Tales of Graces, so it is we have the remastered edition was announced and it's releasing in January. We did get a gameplay trailer for it. We did also get a preview from James. So
yeah,
I forget when you went hands on this. If it was a specific event.
Yeah, it was a
surrounding info?
specific preview event, which actually it was at the PR agency's like so there's this like some inside baseball for folks. There's this like there's several PR agencies in the industry to kind of handle some things, but the main one is 47. And so they handle like a bunch of different companies, like PR stuff. In addition to internal PR, every company still has some internal like people that work on like stuff specifically. When I previewed the Monster Hunter Stories 1 remaster, it was actually at their offices, and the same thing happened here where can't say anything specific because obviously NDA about that, but went to our offices and got to play Tales of Graces F Remastered on PS5 for a couple of hours, and then there was a roundtable discussion with some members of the porting team and got some interesting information. Didn't do a whole separate interview piece for it because it was a bit, the way the interview was handled, it was good information, but the interpreter struggled a bit, so it was kind of hard to like figure out how to like format it if I did so.
Roundtables are always kind of weird to.
Yeah. So I figured I'd just put the relevant information in the preview, which is what I did. Again, I don't mean anything against the interpreter. He did his best. Just it was like kind of hard to parse how to structure it for a separate interview article and whatnot. But anyways, it's Tales of Graces F. It's a really good remaster from what I tried. I played about like 2 hours. It was like from like the lead up to the Rockagon, through the Rockagon to the basically it was like that 2 hour stretch. And it on PS5 it looks and runs great. There's a lot of nice quality of life features which had already been like detailed, and I even like linked to the list that from the previous article about it. But it's like there's way markers, which is nice as an option, even ones for like limited time stuff, so you know, hey, if you want to see something, this is your like only chance to see it, and all sorts of stuff like that. And it's
I guess it was from that era of Tales games, the missable events.
Actually, I remember Graces specifically feeling like it made a turn from like Vesperia a few years earlier. That like, okay, this is much better in terms of missables. Like if you play Vesperia now, you pretty much everyone says you got to follow. Like
even with the definitive edition,
step.
they didn't really make it better.
No. Anyways.
Yeah. But so take a look at that preview. The other thing I'll say is that we kind of had like bits and pieces here and there about like, oh, there's like a logo for this being like a remaster project. Is there going to be multiple games? During the interview, they outright said, yeah, we plan to do multiple games, and we just chose Graces F first because it's one of the most popular. It's already been localized, so it's easier to handle for a worldwide audience. And also, if for whatever reason, it was also just easier for them to port. But they do want to do more titles, and they've even said that they hope to not limit their they don't want to limit what titles they can do in the future. And I even asked specifically if those titles were originally on handhelds, would that determine whether or not they were a possibility going forward? And they said no, they're under consideration. So there is a possibility that we might get Tales of Innocence R down the line. Not a confirmation, but a possibility.
They need to somehow get in contact with the Studio Zine and give them an Eternia remake, Romancing Saga.
I don't know. I think after how well Romancing Saga 2 remake is done, I'm pretty sure Square Enix is looking at them being like, do Romancing Saga 3 next. You have most of the assets.
I am 1,000% on board Romancing Saga 3 remake.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very interesting that there was a preview event for a remaster of a port of a Wii game, which is not complaining about it, but it was a very low key one. There was only 4 outlets invited, and it was all people that most of us know. Like Cosma was there. Previous,
for Silicon Era, probably.
Yeah, for Silicon Era, I believe. Yeah, Cosmo was there. Alessandro from Kotaku, and then Will from I think I forget exactly what his outlet is. I'm sorry, Will. I follow you on Blue Sky. Let me check quick.
But while you're looking, is 47 Communications like the most impactful video game company that most people don't know about?
Probably. Not even just like video game company, because they also handle like Anime Expo stuff too.
Yeah,
So
they do some anime PR. But yeah,
They're huge.
James mentioned it earlier. 47 Communications is a PR agency, and they do a ton, like a ton.
they
Anyone who's done any writing in the video game space knows who I'm talking about. What's kind of funny is that they don't have really a public presence. So it's like anyone who doesn't may have never heard of them, which I never did. I hadn't like, before I started.
Like they work with Square Enix, they work with Bandai Namco, they work with Capcom, they work with Sega, they work with EA, they work with Aniplex. That's a big one. But yeah, they work with a bunch, and there's still like companies that have there's still companies that have like purely internal PR, like Spike Chunsoft has internal PR, and Spike Chunsoft's actually an interesting case. And I don't know if I said this on podcasts in the past, but I've mentioned passing. They're fascinating because their internal PR is like split between North America and Japan, but the two heads directly talk all the time. It's like Spike Chunsoft, like organizationally, even though they have a Western branch, it's not so much, they're like handling their own things separately. It's very much they're working in tandem with the Japanese side of things in a way that a lot of like those smaller companies don't tend to do, which is fascinating. So, but yeah, just some inside baseball.
Who does your friend write for?
I'm still trying to find it. I'm so sorry.
I thought we were stalling, but for time, figure this out.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tales of Graces, we've talked about it before. The story stuff is not really something you should take super seriously. I still think it can be fun, but I think in terms of like combat and the supporting mechanics, top tier in the series.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's a lot of charm to it, but it's not really in the main narrative.
If it's not, at least not as bad as Star Ocean 4, I'm on board.
No, it's better.
Okay.
Monster Vine. That's it.
One more time.
Monster Vine.
Monster Vine. Yep.
Monster Vine. Okay.
Yeah.
A couple more trailers and then some release dates. The last kind of moderate piece of news we have is we have a release date for the first major patch for Final Fantasy XIV, Dawn Trail, patch 7.1. So, James, just can you give us like the abbreviated, like what's the highlight of what people are looking forward to for the first major patch after Dawn Trail?
There's new main story quests. I am not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole because talking about Dawn Trail's story has been a nightmare. I'm excited to see where they go from here. That's all I'll say. There's the new Alliance Raid series, which, hey, Brian, it's tying into Final Fantasy 11.
Yeah.
Nice. There's Preesh.
A game that I would love
Preesh is in the trailer. Preesh is a raid boss.
Oh wow.
But I'm just pulling his chain. If you've listened to the podcast a long time, you know that like
a long
time ago, when I was originally going through 14, I jokingly tried to get Brian into it, and he said, "I won't play 14, but if you ever play 11, I might be interested to do that." And I held him to it, and we went through the base game and the first two expansions.
Yeah, we went through base game, Xylar, and Promathia. And Promathia
is really good.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people circle that as a high watermark for 11. So that's not the reason I stopped. The reason I stopped is just time.
Yeah,
but I was happy that I made it that far.
It's a good place to stop. Yeah, but so. Yeah, the new Alliance Raid is 11 themed. They've remade a bunch of assets in HD. They remade Juno in HD.
Wow.
Man, it would be great if they did an HD remaster of 11 or something like that, but it'll never happen. But they have a lot of the assets now, so maybe. But yeah, so that's a big thing. There's also a new Savage Alliance raid, I think it's called Chaotic Alliance raids now, which means it's a higher difficulty 24-man raid content, which is in between Extreme and Savage mode and difficulty. That doesn't mean anything if you don't play 14. It just basically means that it's higher tier content for more players. And we've had some raids like that in the past, but this is the first time they're doing that. That's completely really separate from like a different vat of content. Because like in Stormblood,
what do they call it?
Chaotic Alliance raid.
Chaotic. Okay.
So they've had like 24-man and above content, like raids that have been higher difficulty before, but they've always been attached to different types of content that were added as part of like a patch cycle. Like in Stormblood, you had Eureka, which was a more open form, like almost 11 style, like segmented experience. And then the penultimate content of that was a like alliance raid basically with a lot of puzzles, and which was like higher difficulty because that would like fit in with what the content was trying to go for. And then in Shadowbringers, you had something similar with Librum Regine, and you had the Librum Regine Savage as an additional version of that, which had its own, which was basically the same idea as what Eureka did. We didn't get anything like that in Endwalker, and I know a lot of people were disappointed by that. We're probably going to get more of that with the new content that's kind of like Eureka and the Bosun Severed Front, but we are getting a completely separate, you don't need to engage with that content, Chaotic Alliance raid, which that it's a new, like they have a new, like obviously title for it and everything, coming with 7.1. They've said depending on how reception is for this content, they might make more in the future, which I'm excited for, because I think that it's probably going to be received relatively well, and that means that maybe every other patch will get another one of these, and that's cool to see. There's also going to be the Ultimate Raid, which comes out in patch 7.11, which is based off of the Shadowbringers normal raid series, which normal raids and alliance raids, the difference is normal raids is 8 players, alliance raids are 24. Normal raids are harder, and then they have the higher difficulty above that called Savage, and then later down the line, they get the Ultimate version, which is like a remix of the entire raid tier into one long 20-minute encounter that's even harder than a Savage fight. And just the density mechanics is a lot, and like you really have to know your full kit, and it's basically the apex of what you can attempt to clear in raid content in Final Fantasy XIV. That comes out 2 weeks after the patch, so right around the holidays. Good luck to everyone raiding that Ultimate Raid, because most people it's going to take more than a month, which means that you're going to be raiding from Thanksgiving through New Year's. Good luck. I'm not sure if I'm going to raid it yet. I kind of want to, but also I understand very much, because of my past experience as Ultimate raiding, that is a commitment. That is one hell of a commitment.
Did you clear the last Ultimate? I forget.
I got to phase 4 in top. I did not like top, so I gave it up. DSR, I got to the last phase, and I didn't manage to clear it, because by the time that we got to the last phase, the raid tier, the Savage raid tier after that dropped. And
right.
So I still want to go back to it, because you get that far in an Ultimate raid, you know you can clear it. It's just a matter of time. It's just a thing where it's like, I need to find a group to do it with.
Yeah, time and scheduling and getting a group of people.
Yeah.
But cool. It sounds like Final Fantasy XIV, outside of criticism with the story specifically, which you kind of sidestepped around, has a lot of the expected trappings for people to keep coming back.
I will say, though, that there has been some criticism that, and this has always been a problem with the way that the patch cycle for 14 works, is that you'll have these different things that are advertised for this is what the expansion is going to bring. But what they really mean is these new features, most of them aren't going to be there at launch. They're not going to be there until like the 0.3 patch, which is basically a year after the expansion comes out. So a lot of the new content, like the new, like the space expedition stuff, which I think is going to be similar to either the Diadem, which is for crafters, gatherers, or it's going to be similar to the Island Sanctuary, which was added in Endwalker, and mixed reception to that. That's not going to come until probably like 7.3. the new like field activities, which I explained is probably going to be similar to Yuriken Boja because that's what they're comparing it to. Not going to really be a thing till like 7.25, 7.3, 7.35. We don't know directly when it's going to come, but probably around there. So there is a lot of new content coming in 7.1 because it is a new major patch. You're going to get like 6-7 hours of main story. You're going to get a new extreme trial. You're probably going to get a new trial in addition to that. And then you get the Alliance raid, you get the Chaotic Alliance raid, and you get the Ultimate. One thing you might have noticed about that is that if you're not someone that plays Final Fantasy XIV for high-end content, you basically only get the story and the Alliance raid and nothing else. And there's been a lot of people that have been complaining about that. Again, this has been a problem with the structure of how 14 handles its patches from the get-go. And maybe in the future, they might consider trying to bring in some of the newer content earlier in the patch cycle and then just expand it slowly throughout the expansion. I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's a new expansion. The reception has been generally positive, but considerably more mixed than the last two expansions. So it's just come up, and I figure I'd comment on it.
That makes sense. And like sometime in November, Guild Wars is going to get its first content update for Jantier Wilds, and it's similar in two ways. One, some of the things that they said, they marketed with the expansion are just now coming out, so they didn't come out with a launch; they're coming out with a patch, and the patch will include a raid. But if you're not into raiding and you've only got story, you might have in a Guild Wars expansion like 4 hours of story, and that's it. And it's like, oh well, if you're not interested in raiding, then you might just have to be, shelve it until the next major update. So I think it just kind of almost comes with the territory in terms of the variety of experiences that these MMOs offer.
Yeah.
And
not to mention like a little more than a week ago, like World of Warcraft just also had a fairly major patch for its 20th anniversary, which I haven't checked out yet because I've been too busy with Kaino Kaseki, but I might actually check it out now that unfortunately I now play WoW.
There you go. But no, thank you for giving us the details for 7.1 coming out in just over a week after the time of recording. Just a few trailers and a few updates here. We'll kind of quickly go through these. Showa American Story. This is a game that I can't describe. So Adam, help me, or Josh, help me.
Okay, I haven't seen this trailer, but the game is basically, it's made by a Chinese developer. Is like, what if Japan's economic success was so great that it basically colonized the United States?
Isn't that basically what Cyberpunk 2077 was based on?
That's almost like that's like if they wrestled their economic influence into the United States.
Yeah, so there's the developers on Netcom Entertainment for this, and then it's described as it's an alternate history in the 1980s, and then Japan still experienced its economic bubble, but it never popped here. So they were able to accrue enough wealth to buy the majority of the USA's land for the premise of Showa American Stories. So, it's like Showa era 66, as it's described in the game. So it's very much a lot of like American Japan fusion type of locales and influence in this game. Like it seeped in everything. Like this new trailer for it is like super even the announcement trailer for this game is like absurd. But like this new one definitely very absurd because like it has like stuff like, hey, the president of the United States watches anime at exactly 6:30 daily. Dialogue like that, and then like some of the things that some of the locales like in this game is like a parody of McDonald's, like it's like McDonald's or something. Like you see this in anime, just parodies of McDonald's, but like you see like Wasabi Coke. You see parodies of like say like Fist of the North Star, or in this game like the general.
Didn't McDonald's like officially trademark McDonald's as a joke?
Maybe they definitely had like that anime collaboration thing. With the campaign that they ran not too long ago.
They trademarked it and made an official thing.
That's and then like I mean this trailer just a lot. Like one of the bosses that they showed off, like this general riding like this really disfigured horse. And it's very, very much Fist of the North Star vibes, the General Rao, like kind of parodying off of that. And they show a little bit of the gameplay here. So the premise of this, like on top of the alternate history stuff, your protagonist is a 19-year-old stunt woman named Choco, and Choco and her sister are attacked in Hollywood by assassins. And when Choco awakens after the attack, she finds out that the world she knew is overrun by zombies. So that's why you see a lot of her mauling down zombies. So she has to find out what happened to her sister as she's going through slaughtering zombies and all sorts of fucked up shit. And it's like has like damage numbers. It's an RPG. What another parody that they have in this trailer is like Gurren Lagann. She has this big ass drill and like doing like this Giga Drill Breaker attack through the zombies. It looks insane. I guess is the best term I could apply here. I mean, it looks compelling. I guess the biggest new news out of this, besides this trailer, is they're committing to a release in 2025 for PS5 and PC. They have dropped the PS4 version of this game when they initially announced the PS4 version when it was announced like several years ago. But they dropped that, so it's only coming to PS5 and Steam for now, 2025. And yeah, and definitely go give that trailer a watch because the words don't do it justice.
Yeah,
know?
it. It is a trip. Like
It is a
I almost
trailer
want to
that
play.
exists.
I almost want to play this game just to experience it.
If anything,
Mhm.
if anything they do, they shoot really good, interesting trailers for this game.
There you go. They've at least hit that. One other trailer that we got is for a game that was first announced back in 2020 as part of it was kickstarted, and then it eventually had another crowdfunding campaign through Fangamer Slacker Backer. This is called Kingdom of Night. It's like an isometric horror game, and we got a new trailer for this coming out of the PC indie horror showcase. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but it's like Hyperlight Drifter meets isometric Resident Evil. Like I'm trying to describe them. There's probably a better point of comparison for it, but it is still no release date for this. So this is just kind of like a reminder that this game was announced a few years ago, came out of a crowdfunding campaign, and is still slated to release, but only on PC at this point, even though they had previously committed to consoles at the time, Switch, Xbox, and One and PS4. So it's an interesting indie project that is probably just taking its time due to indie projects all have different constraints in terms of funding and who's able to work off them in free time and whether or not it's the primary. I don't know if this is the debut project for Black Seven Studios or not, but we got
I'm
an
not
interesting trailer on here, and it's still being worked on. So they're diligently plugging away to try to get Kingdom of Night to release. Going through some like release dates to round this out. Metal Slug Tactics. We talked about this either last week or 2 weeks ago. It finally got its release date of November 5th after previously just being slated for the fall. When it releases on November 5th, they've confirmed that it will also be available as part of Xbox and PC Game Pass. So those that are interested in subscribe to those can try it out. Flint, Treasure of Oblivion. This is like the isometric nautical pirate themed CRPG that was originally slated to release in late October. Got pushed back just a few weeks for polish. It'll now release on the 14th.
I'd check out
Adam,
this
do you know
game
if we
if
have
it
anyone
wasn't.
covering this
No, we don't. But I'd check it out if it
Yeah.
wasn't releasing in such a hectic time.
on the same day as Dragon Quest HD?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think it's an interesting concept of a game, and definitely something that I might try to squeeze in that January or maybe like December timeframe. But yeah, they've pushed it back a few weeks just for some polish, so hopefully launch on November 14th will be as smooth as possible. This is the one I kind of spoiled earlier, but East Memoire, The Ultimate Felghana. This is like the remaster for East, The Ultimate Felghana that released. When did this release in Japan? A few years back. It was either 2023 or early 2020
Well,
this
it came
year.
out for Switch
But
first and then PS4, so it's kind of a staggered release in Japan, whereas it's coming out for both those platforms, of course, at the same time in the West.
right, so January 7th here in the West for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch. And then This is kind of an interesting Switch port. Chernobylite. We've been talking a little bit about Chernobylite 2 Exclusion Zone. The sequel is releasing next year, but Chernobylite, the original game that originally released in 2021, will receive a port on Nintendo Switch. It's currently on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. They didn't date the Switch port. They've just announced, or really a teaser, that it's coming to Switch. So this is almost more interesting. Just like I'm just curious, like what goes behind scenes for a decision like this to be greenlit in terms of like the market analysis for a console that is, I won't say on its way out, but the Switch 2 is around the if it's not around the corner, it's down the road. So I'm just curious, like the decision to say, like, yeah, we want to release it on Switch, and we think it's a good, financial idea for us. That's kind of what I start thinking of when I see announcements like this. But apparently, Yakuza Kiwami on Switch has done really, really well. So I think just Nintendo consoles have been more and more willing to see like these kind of more mature, even late ports doing pretty well on that
I'm
console.
interested to see how fast, if there will even be like a fast like turnover to the focusing on the Switch's successor, because there's like with the Switch's successor coming out doesn't erase the Switch. It's still gonna be a fucking
Right.
shitload of Switches out there. So how long are people gonna cling to the
Especially in
Switch?
Japan,
Yeah.
like in Japan, there's like something like 34 million sold. That's a massive user base that, at least for a couple of years, like a lot of developers are just not going to want to ignore, especially considering we keep seeing games like skipping the Switch and suffering for it. Like Visions of Mana is probably like one really good example. So
Yeah, and also like there's still upcoming new releases still coming to PS4. So it's
Yeah.
just
Right, yeah. And at the end of January, on January 30th, KonoSuba, God's Blessing on This Wonderful World, Fantastic Days, will be shutting down its global version at the end of the
yeah,
month.
yeah, but both the Japanese and global English servers. So just cutting this game off globally or just worldwide simultaneously. Like, hey, it ran its course. Goodbye. That's a normal life cycle of games of this type. Like this came out February 2020 in
20.
Japan and like 2021 in US. So
Mhm.
kind of lasted about 3 to 4 years. Is kind of the normal lifespan for these types of games. If they're doing like healthy and well. Obviously, the ones that don't do so well, th- so
It does kind of
in
feel
some
like 4
instances,
years is like the benchmark.
yeah, in some instances that they get cut off 2 weeks after release.
Yeah. Or they announced that they were launching or they announced that they're going to be shutting down prior to launch.
Yeah.
I forget what game that happened to, but yeah.
Love
Well,
Live, the
oh, that's
English
right.
release of some Love Live mobile game, because
yeah,
because the
like
Japanese
what wasn't
version,
it like Idol
the-
School Festival 2, and it was like
yeah,
we are pleased to announce the release date for our game. We are also, unfortunately, we must announce the closure date for our game in the same fucking tweet. The same tweet.
yeah, because the Japanese version was very, very, very unsuccessful, unexpectedly, to like really fucking bombed to the point that they
Yeah.
already announced the end of service before the English version came out. So they were stuck between a rock and a hard place in that instance.
Yeah. They probably were like contractually obligated to release it, but it was like, well, we're not gonna have it for more than like 3 months.
Yeah, that was
Which
insane messaging. Still, by the way, still one of my favorite tweets.
Yeah, and to further that, to be clear, I think if you're a mobile game and you have to announce the closure date for your game the same time you announce when it's going to be released, I don't think legally you should be allowed to take people's money.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I can get behind that.
Yeah, this was a really good podcast. I know it was one of our longer ones, but we got a really deep look into Dragon Age of Veilguard. We got to look at the Monster Hunter Wilds beta, which is going to be one of the hugest releases for next year for our site, especially. Got to talk about Yakuza, the TV show, which is not something we get to do a whole lot here.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
That was awesome, incredible.
Yeah, and
life changing.
We made it.
I'm gonna watch the TV show first, and I'm gonna play the game. I'm like, wow, I hear you all wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh man, you shouldn't tweet about that. That might make some people. Oh man.
It was a joke.
But yeah. So obviously, if you made it to the end of this podcast, thank you so much for listening. Especially 3 hours worth. You probably had to listen to this in a couple sessions. Hopefully, you're doing well and you're on keeping up with all the releases this holiday season, especially if you're into RPGs. Because whether you're playing Metaphor or Saga or Ys or Dragon Age or still catching up on other stuff, we feel you. We really do. Go ahead and look at those reviews on the website for Dragon Age Veilguard. We got the Dragon Age Veilguard guides. We have the Steam Deck articles for both Dragon Age Veilguard as well as for Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. We had a preview on that. We'll be talking, of course, more about the Dragon Quest III remake either next week or the week after. We're already circling our calendar for all the games next year. We just added Xenoblade Chronicles Cross to the list. If you like us, if you like what we do, help.
This year's already
follow-
been so many RPGs, and it feels like it's already like setting itself up to be like, oh man.
Yeah, if search for RPG Space Sites on your favorite social media platform, and we'll probably be there. Give us a follow. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG site. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care. We'll talk to you later.